starting to play as Batman. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 251. Are you talking to me? In the long river of history, countless fantasy works have been born, among which there are many great powers from different systems that can destroy the world. Therefore, there are cross-border battles without internal ghosts, which has always been a regular after-dinner program for the audience who upholds the spirit of humanfulness. However, the contestants who stand out from this kind of painful program are often not those great powers who can collapse stars and annihilate everything, but those funny characters who are almost invincible without logic and immortal. If you want to find a typical funny character among Marvel heroes, it must be Squirrel Girl. A large number of hanging level villains, including Thanos and Dr. Doom, have been punished by her in a nonsensical and illogical form. Therefore, Squirrel Girl is also jokingly called the ceiling of Marvel's combat power. But if you want to choose an unserious character who is often interspersed in the mainstream Marvel works with a serious style, then Deadpool should be the first choice. First of all, apart from anything else, he has an ability that is almost necessary for funny characters: self-healing factor. Moreover, unlike Wolverine's self-healing factor, which is heavy and requires being stabbed and tortured to highlight the character's tragic mood, Deadpool's self-healing factor is better than the original. Although it was originally derived from Wolverine, it is much stronger than Wolverine. In the live-action movie, his regeneration ability is even weakened. If we must make an analogy, his self-healing strength feels almost comparable to Tom's conceptual regeneration. He can grow back even after being beheaded, dismembered, sliced, or even crushed to ashes, which is basically invincible. Then he is also Marvel's top weapon and bare-handed combat master. The biggest difference between him and other fighting heroes who come out of the assembly line factory is that he does not play by the routine. It is quite like the feeling of no moves are better than moves in martial arts. He makes moves at will without rules and common sense, and no one can guess. Because of this, he is the natural enemy of the imitation master, the fighting master who learns routines and reads moves in Marvel. Fighting masters like Captain America and Black Widow are no match for Taskmaster in terms of skills in hand-to-hand combat, but Deadpool can knock Taskmaster down within 3 moves. Deadpool is also good at hot weapons, so his weapons and equipment are also changed all year round. If we talk about the most distinctive and powerful practical ones, of course we have to mention his magical teleportation belt. A belt with a built-in space teleportation device allows Deadpool to gain the ability to teleport over short distances. The actual effect of its application has already appeared in the classic high-scoring movie Wolverine prequel, in which Deadpool has a similar teleportation ability, but it has been adapted into a mutant ability instead of equipment. Similar to the movie, Deadpool's teleportation can only teleport over short distances, and it is not stable. He cannot selectively adjust the location of the movement, and can only choose a general direction. Sometimes it may be closer and sometimes it may be farther. If he is unlucky, he may even lose his arms and legs. So this also makes it almost a superpowered equipment tailor-made for Deadpool. After all, not everyone can survive a failed teleportation where only the head is teleported, but not the body. Although the rating is B-level, and among B-level heroes, his individual destructive power is definitely not comparable to Iron Man, but this can be regarded as a hero that expands the richness of the pool. Even the limited teleportation is a very good skill, not to mention that he also has an invincible buff. Then there is the remaining C-level pool single draw ticket. Chu Cheng has no expectations for the C-level pool as always, and basically draws casually with the mentality of drawing for fun. Then this time the luck should be pretty good, and the quality of the heroes released in the C-level pool is pretty good. Hawkeye, an agent of SHIELD, a veteran of the Avengers, and the strongest archer on Marvel Earth. In the first generation of the Avengers, this guy may be the veteran with the lowest presence. He is almost invisible among his teammates. Unlike Black Widow, although he is equally strong, but she is white and big, which is also a specialty, so only the poor Hawkeye was pointed at by passers-by and shouted fuck, it's the Avenger with a bow and arrow in his personal TV series 10 years later. Hawkeye didn't say it, but he was still a little dissatisfied. It was fine that he was marginalized by his own amazing teammates, but after 10 years, his popularity was not as high as the funny Ant-Man. His mentality collapsed. However, Hawkeye's strength was generally underestimated. Sometimes he would play a role similar to the think tank of the next door Zenglian master, and was responsible for showing the backup plan to save the situation when the amazing teammates were wiped out. It's just that the treatment next door is TC's own son, so he can't compare. Besides, Chu Cheng already has the first archer in DC, and the positioning abilities of the two are basically the same, so it's not new. According to convention, every time a new hero with strong strength or novel abilities is shipped, there must be a wave of testing. Instant teleportation is also a new ability type that Chu Cheng has opened for the first time, and it must not be missed. Before he had time to ask questions, after reading the hero's attributes, the fifth sister spoke at the right time. Sir, a team of outsiders came to Jiangdu today, and I think you might want to know. After she said that, she had swiped the screen and displayed a list of personnel. He once again couldn't help but sigh that fifth sister was such a capable and good secretary. Chu Cheng glanced at them and couldn't help but frown slightly. Killer? This time it wasn't the organization called Black Sun. After all, the nominal leader of that organization is now Death Bell, who is actually Chu himself. Now after Death Bell's good advice, they all have a great enlightenment, their thoughts have been sublimated, and they are considering a complete transformation. Now all the killers in the organization are kind-hearted people who serve the people, because those who failed to sublimate have died. Of course, considering that this organization is essentially a killer organization, it is unrealistic to ask a group of guys who can only make a living by killing people to really quit their jobs and move bricks. So Chu Cheng, or Death Bell, has currently formulated a policy that the basic idea of our organization's one-shot one remains unchanged. Killing people still needs to be killed, but we only kill those who should be killed. Compared with the vulgar goal of making money, we should give priority to killing those who are more beneficial to society when they are dead than when they are alive. Of course, it would be better if we can make more money while serving the society. This is also Chu Cheng's idea for the next step of the entire assassin world. There is an old saying that it is better to drain than to block. It is not impossible for him to completely eliminate the profession of assassins, but it is time-consuming and laborious. To be honest, he has many other priorities and does not have the time. As a result, he did not bother these people, but someone who is not afraid of death came to him, ran to Jiangdu. This occupied area has been planted with bat flags. This is too arrogant. But this is obviously a good opportunity to try out a new hero. I think you must have an address, Friday. Jiangdu is his earliest base and occupied city, and it is also a place equivalent to his base camp, so naturally he needs to pay special attention. All surveillance in the entire city is under his surveillance. The police channel of the Public Security Bureau is also in real-time monitoring status, and all the alarms of the Jiangdu branch of the Special Service 9th Division cannot escape his attention. It can be said that he has eyes and ears all over the city, and he will know any movement. Of course, sir. I have sent it to you. Friday said. The location was displayed at the port, in a warehouse, a favorite of various agents, assassins and secret organizations. It is speculated that it should be a temporary base, and they will not move in the short term. Very good, then let's go and say hello. Deadpool was pulled into the team's substitute position, and the default character was still Batman. After all, there was still some distance to the warehouse, and moving speed was not Deadpool's strong point. The wings and thrusters of the cape gave Batman the ability to move at super high speed between urban areas. At such a flying speed, there was almost nothing far away from him in the entire city. In just a moment, Batman landed on the top of the target warehouse. The detective mode was activated and quickly scanned the targets inside the warehouse. The 4 assassins were all inside, but unexpectedly, there were not only a few of them, they seemed to have brought a lot of thugs. In addition to the assassins, the detective mode marked a total of 13 targets. all of which were monitored as armed. If Batman was used now, then according to his style, he should walk on his knees and defeat them one by one. But the main force to be tested today is not Batman. Press the switch button, and the weirdo in the red and black uniform with 10 knives on his back quickly landed on the roof. Ha. Finally, it's time to show off my skills. Deadpool was eager to try, and he started to talk as soon as he landed. Hey player, I know it's a bit difficult for you to restore 1/10 of my handsomeness, but promise me that we will at least be handsome enough when we enter the venue later, okay? Chu-Cheng. Was this guy just talking to me? Chapter 252. What kind of monster is this? Question mark? Friday, is he talking to me? I think so, sir. Chu-Cheng. This is new. Although his hero sometimes triggers some special voices in certain scenes, this is the first time he talks directly to the player. No, I should have thought of it earlier. Chu-Cheng has played Deadpool games before, but it was so long ago that he has forgotten a little. There was an action-adventure game for Deadpool in 2013. Because the game was not particularly amazing, Chu-Cheng's impression of it is a little vague, but now thinking back, Deadpool in the game back then had a setting to talk to the player. This is already Deadpool's personal feature. Whether in comic movies or games, the fourth wall is broken from time to time. It is said that the original reason is that he was teleported to the center of reality by the Beyonder. Therefore, reality perception is generally regarded as one of Deadpool's characteristics. He knows that he is a comic game character. However, this ability can only allow him to interact and complain with the audience from time to time, and it does not have any very practical use. In fact, this is the character setting. It is the same as the previous heroes. They just trigger the hero's automatic dialogue under certain circumstances. For example, when playing Xiao-Chang before, his mouth was chattering almost non-stop. The characteristic of Deadpool is that sometimes the triggering dialogue target is changed from the enemy to the player. When Chu-Cheng controlled Deadpool to jump from the skylight and landed on the roof beam, he started to chatter again. I don't think this is a good idea, Deadpool said. If it were me, I would come in from the vent in the northwest corner instead of acting like an amateur. The real experts all climb vents, like Spider-Man and Batman. And do you know what's better than them than me? I won't be infected with the virus, man. Can you imagine Batman crawling around in the dirty vents with his nose and chin exposed all day? God, I feel sorry for that guy's lungs. Chu-Cheng. Continuing to ignore Deadpool, he controlled Deadpool to move along the beam and walk towards a good observation point. Hey, don't move my body. Wait, there. That's not allowed. Oh, okay, wait, you've already passed it. It's okay then. Chu-Cheng took a deep breath. Can we turn off the voice module, Friday? Is it true that no one can hear his nonsense like this? That's his inner thoughts, sir. Only you can hear it. Chu-Cheng felt a little complicated for a moment. Part of him thought it was a good thing that it was just an inner monologue, otherwise he would be isolated from the covert operation with this mouth. But another part of him subtly felt that it was a bit unpleasant to be nagging like this endlessly, but he could only torture himself and not others. Of course, you can select the block character voice option in the game settings. Friday said, then you won't hear it. Chu-Cheng's eyes lit up. There is such a good thing. Why didn't you say it earlier? So without thinking, he directly followed Friday's prompt to open the settings interface and found the blocking option. Deadpool was shocked. Hey player, big brother, sir, wait a minute. I promise I will be as obedient as a turtle son, don't. Chu-Cheng couldn't hear the second half of the sentence because he clicked the blocking button. The world suddenly became quiet. Deadpool, at %an. Of course, this function is voice blocking instead of directly muting him, so he can still speak, but Chu-Cheng can't hear him. There is no need to worry about missing any game tips or key voices about the use of hero abilities, because he can't hear them. But Friday can actually monitor the hero's situation in real time. If Deadpool really says something nutritious, she will remind the master. Now, let's try what this cheap mercenary can do. Chu-Cheng stretched out his 10 fingers and directly controlled Deadpool to fall. At the same time, Deadpool, who Chu-Cheng couldn't hear, was still yelling, "No superhero landing. No superhero landing. Ah." The red mercenary jumped directly from the beam. The whole warehouse was alarmed. No one was prepared, and everyone saw the afterimage of the red mercenary like a god descending from the sky, just like the magnificent appearance of the hero characters in the superhero stories they had heard. Although this group of people accepted the mission and came to Jiangdu to make a fortune, based on the principle of the bold will die of overeating and the timid will die of starvation, they also knew who was protecting Jiangdu. Many well-known superheroes, led by Batman, were active in this city. Before the operation began, the person in charge repeatedly emphasized that they must keep a low profile and try not to attract the attention of a certain bat. But they didn't expect that they would still attract the attention of these cross-dressing lunatics, even though they were so low-key. In an instant, everyone held their breath and turned their guns around. Bang! Deadpool fell to the ground in a very inelegant big posture, with his head down and his butt sticking up. It seemed that he fell hard. The gangsters. What kind of trick is this? Obviously, this height is a bit too high for the current hero. Friday said gently. Chu Cheng. Well, that's right. Although Deadpool also has enhanced physical fitness, it is definitely not comparable to Spider-Man, and he doesn't have Spider-Man's innate balance. Then, unlike some of the rich second-generation bats, he was not equipped with a high-tech cape that increased wind resistance and reduced the pressure, so he had no pressure to land at high altitudes. With Deadpool's physical strength, he might be able to pose after coming down from a height of 2 or 3 floors. If he landed from a height higher, it would basically depend on his thick skin. The secret is not to be afraid of falling. His blood was basically restored to full from the moment he landed to the moment he got up, so in fact, this landing was very stable. It's just that the posture is not elegant and a bit embarrassing. Deadpool cursed, "Player, you little cutie." Of course, Chu Cheng still couldn't hear it. He had already controlled Deadpool to start the action. When the latter stood up, his left hand had already taken out a submachine gun, and his right hand quickly drew a long sword from his back. "Shoot!" someone shouted. Bullets immediately rained down like raindrops, densely surrounding Deadpool. The rain of bullets intertwined and intersected Deadpool's body, and blood flew everywhere, soon forming a pool of blood on the ground. But Chu Cheng simply ignored the damage from the gun. Deadpool fired a burst of bullets from his submachine gun, and the two gangsters fell down. The bullets exploded on the walls around them. Then Deadpool did a gorgeous somersault and landed between the 3 gangsters in the aisle above the warehouse. He shook his right wrist and raised his long sword. The 2 men's palms were broken at the wrists in the flash of the sword. They couldn't help but cry in pain. "Don't cry, don't cry. Uncle Deadpool will heal you now." As soon as he finished speaking, Deadpool swung his sword again. The heads of the 2 men were chopped off at the same time, and their skulls rolled to the side. The screams of the 2 men really stopped. "See? It doesn't hurt in an instant." Deadpool smiled. "I never lie." When he turned around, the shotgun in the hand of the 3rd man was already pointed at him. There was a bang, and the shotgun was fired almost at his face. The fierce firepower of the shotgun directly blew off half of Deadpool's head. However, the next moment, the gunman was horrified to see that the weirdo's head was blown up horribly, with blood plasma and contents flying everywhere. However, the weirdo was still standing there, and only rolled his eyes upwards in a creepy way, as if trying to see his blown off head. Then he glared at the gunman angrily. "Did you just blow up my brain?" The gunman was so scared that his brain almost stopped working instantly. The gun in his hand seemed to weigh 1,000 pounds, and he couldn't even hold it steady, let alone pull the trigger. He trembled and said, "I'm so sorry, sir." "Yeah, you'd better be sorry." Deadpool cursed and chopped off the man's head with a sword. "MD, if I wasn't afraid that your atrophied cerebellum would affect my genius IQ, I would have asked you to compensate me with your brain." Fuck. The remaining killers and gangsters around were stunned for a moment when they saw the man with half of his head flying off, bleeding all over his body and cursing. "What the hell is this zombie?" No, even zombies that were shot in the head should be dead, right? What kind of monster did they run into? Last day, keep begging for monthly votes. Chapter 253. What happened? From Chu Cheng's perspective, this scene feels like a Washang, a hero with an invincible cheat, who ignores damage and jumps in to chop melons and vegetables. It's just that the scene is a little bloody and the level is a little higher. However, it's different from the opposite perspective. This is simply a horror game. Imagine a madman jumping down from the ceiling. His body is riddled with bullets, but he can still jump around. His blood can fill a swimming pool. Normal humans should have sucked it dry long ago, but this man not only looks fine, but even more frustrating is that his mouth is fine too, and it keeps on talking. You can see the pieces of flesh that were blown off his body from the ground, where the blood is flowing, and occasionally even broken bones. After all, someone doesn't have an adamantium skeleton, and some large caliber bullets also cut off some things that are suspected to be organ fragments. Some killers are not so confident that they seem to have shot through his heart. In fact, the killer brother is usually quite confident in his shooting skills. He was 90% sure that he should have hit it. But seeing this guy jumping around, as if he didn't feel anything at all, and even when he was shot through the heart, his damn mouth didn't stop for even half a second, he couldn't help but doubt whether his scroddiness bullet had hit or not. Finally, when the shotgun blew off half of this thing's head, it almost shattered everyone's 3 views. Imagine a guy with blood all over his body, bullet holes all over his uniform, and a piece of his head missing, cursing while bleeding, and chopping off several of your teammates. Everyone who saw this scene couldn't help but lose their sanity, and their distorted expressions were as if they were looking directly at some kind of unspeakable fear. After killing the 3 people in a second, Deadpool jumped down from the metal aisle back to the ground. The moment he landed, everyone below was trembling with fear, and some people were so scared that they trembled all over and couldn't even hold their guns and sat down on the ground. Why are you all so nervous? Deadpool walked forward with a smile. I don't eat humans. Boom. Without any sign, a heavy shadow suddenly flew over, like a speeding train. Deadpool was completely unprepared and was hit head on by the shadow and was knocked out. Some heavy mechanical equipment, the bulky metal shell pushed Deadpool backwards and hit the wall with a clang. Deadpool was crushed, as if he had deflated apart, and slid down the wall to the ground. Ahem. Don't worry, I'm fine. He coughed up 2 mouthfuls of blood, shook his head, and climbed up again. The gangster next to him was so shocked that he almost peed. Just with that collision just now, if it was a normal person, it would be wrong. It should be said that, if it was any carbon-based creature, he would have been crushed. A rough visual inspection would feel that his internal organs would be ruptured, and his bones would be crushed. It's ridiculous that he can still stand up. Chu Cheng also discovered that Deadpool's reaction didn't seem to be very sharp. For example, if it was Spider-Man, there would definitely be a spider sense prompt, and if it was Batman, there would also be a counterattack sign. But until Deadpool was stuck on the wall, there was no feedback from his side from beginning to end. On second thought, it was probably because Deadpool's health bar was thick enough and his pain nerves were a little dull compared to ordinary people, so he was not so sensitive to being hit or hurt. It's not that his reflex nerves are not fast enough, but his body is a little numb to the matter of taking damage, so the reaction from the player's perspective is that the counterattack sign will appear a little dull. Sneak attack. Shameless. Unfair martial arts. Cough cough. Deadpool moved his neck and frowned, as if he felt that his cervical vertebrae, which was recovering, had grown crooked. So he pressed his head with both hands. Click. Straightened. Some killers seemed to hear the sound of their chins hitting the ground. Now no one doubts the fact that this thing is not a person. This thing is almost the most terrifying thing they have ever encountered in their lives. Fortunately, the leader of their trip was also here, the guy who attacked Deadpool. When they noticed the leader's appearance, many people showed surprise. The leader should not have been in this warehouse. It was obvious that he had just rushed back. His appearance immediately gave those whose bladders were on the verge of losing control a reassurance. Although Deadpool was obviously beyond their understanding, it didn't matter as long as this man was there. Because it has always been like this. Because their leader was also not a regular existence. He looked like a strong man, and there didn't seem to be anything special. But the huge equipment just now was clearly pushed over by this guy. Obviously, it was not a power that humans could have. Infected. Chu Cheng frowned. More like a phantom, sir. Friday said. A phantom appeared among the killers who came to Jiangdu. In fact, Chu Cheng had seen relevant reports from the 9th department before. According to the recent statistics from the entire Earth pole star, the rate of phantoms seems to be increasing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Another phenomenon that may verify the theory of the ancient gods from outer space are approaching. The facial recognition just came out with the result. Friday quickly compared the results. Own Tahan, a senior killer. It is speculated that we may be facing the phantom of a killer. No difference. Chu Cheng said that he had already pressed the number key to switch weapons, and Deadpool quickly changed to a pistol and pointed it at Tahan. The trigger was pulled, and a flash of fire appeared at the muzzle. However, the bullet was abruptly stopped nearly 1 meter away from the tip of the man's nose. It was quickly squeezed and deformed, like hitting a wall made of air, turning into a deflated shell, and fell to the ground with a clang. "Hey. This is not fair, you cheated." Deadpool yelled, and at the same time, drew his sword out of the sheath and flew forward. He changed his steps, and quickly turned half a circle around the man. But the blade and the bullet seemed to hit an invisible barrier, and sparks kept hitting each other out of thin air. Some kind of defensive structure, maybe a force field, maybe an air barrier. Friday said while analyzing the hitting data fed back from Deadpool, and at the same time modeling with her amazing computing power. In the blink of an eye, she completed the simple modeling, and displayed it on Chu Cheng's screen. Chu Cheng could see from the modeling that there was some kind of shield around the man, like a transparent eggshell protecting him in the center, and neither Deadpool's sword nor bullets could penetrate it. Absolute defense. Everyone has tricks these days. Chu Cheng muttered. None of the conventional ammunition and blades can penetrate it, but it is speculated that there should be an upper limit. Friday continued, the recommended tactic is to switch heroes. Batman should have at least 3 ways to crack this ability. No, we are testing new heroes today. Chu Cheng smiled. It's just an egg. Our Deadpool has not tested any abilities yet. At this time, Tahan was standing there calmly, watching Deadpool shoot and swing his sword at him in vain again and again. It's useless. Save your energy. Tahan said calmly, you can't hurt me. At this time, Deadpool had thrown away the pistol with an empty magazine. Of course, he was a virtual character in the game, so it looked like he had thrown it away, but in fact, the equipment would be refreshed and reset after a while. He held the sword with both hands and slashed at the invisible shield. The sword light flashed around Tahan's body and sparks flew from the blade. "Oh, you disgusting Deadpool cursed. "I swear to my grandmother's grave, for God's sake, when I break through this stupid shell, I will definitely kiss your ass with my boots. I will." As soon as the voice fell, Chu Cheng's equipment selection had switched to the teleportation belt. Space transmission device. Start. Then, under the gaze of everyone in the warehouse, Deadpool was seen to be wrapped in a blue ripple and disappeared out of thin air. The next second, Deadpool flashed out of thin air. Light blue ripples flashed inside the invisible protective layer, wrapping a group of after images that began to become clearer from blurry, almost sticking to Tahan's face and maintaining an exaggerated swinging action. Tahan's pupils shrank, and he was horrified, but it was too late. Sorry for not saying hello in advance, but I'm already inside with a sharp blow. Tahan's head was chopped off at the neck and flew out. The killers who were full of confidence in the leader in the last second now all had expressions that exploded. What the hell? What just happened? Question mark? Chapter 254 Assassination Target. With one sword. Tahan's head was separated from his body and flew in the direction of the sword. Perhaps because it was the Phantom, he was still conscious when his head flew in the air. He stared with horror at his decapitated body flying away in his sight. His face was full of shock until his death. How could it be possible? He thought he was invincible, since he awakened his ability, and thought that there was nothing in the world that could hurt him. But what happened just now? Why did my head suddenly disappear? Question mark? But he may never figure out this question. Even among the Phantoms, only a few special individuals with strong vitality have the ability to survive after their heads are cut off. Ordinary infected people and Phantoms cannot do it. Tahan's consciousness quickly dissipated, and even the pain was blurred. The last picture that the head received was that it fell down while spinning, and then with a snap, it was caught in the hand of the red-clothed weirdo. That's right, Deadpool cut off his head with a sword and then reached out to catch it steadily. He held up the head and looked into the other person's eyes. He was thoughtful after a glance. You know what? I suddenly realized that some people's looks are not suitable for overall appearance. Some people look ugly when their heads are on their bodies, but once you take them off and look at them separately. He looked at the head carefully. It seems to be even uglier. Puff. Tahan vomited blood. If the head could still spit blood, it would definitely do so. Its whole face twitched, as if it was extremely angry, and finally died completely. Are you so angry? Forget it. After all, it's impossible for everyone to be as handsome, cute and lovable as me, right? He threw the head aside casually. The head with its eyes open rolled on the ground towards several killers, who were so scared that their faces turned pale, and they shrank to the side. Now they felt even more creepy when looking at Deadpool than before. The person in charge is confused, but the bystander is clear. Things happened so fast that Tahan's brain was already separated before he had time to think, so he never understood what happened until he died. But they all saw it clearly. Before today, they still thought that the boss should be invincible. After all, since they followed the boss, they have never seen him get his defense broken. Whether it was a blunt object or a rain of bullets, the boss had no pressure to resist, so they had an illusion that the boss is invincible. After all, at their level, they basically can't touch things with more powerful firepower. Having such a super powerful boss leading the team is also the main reason why they dare to come to Jiangdu to make business. Otherwise, there are unwritten rules in the killer industry, that is, not to accept business from Jiangdu. This city is the city of Batman. But their biggest reliance, the boss who they think has invincible superpowers, was killed so easily. Question mark? Instant teleportation? Zombies who can teleport and are not afraid of headshots? Question mark? Fear has completely dominated the bodies of each of them, making it impossible for them to escape or fight back. Chu Cheng was very satisfied with the test of the space teleportation belt. This equipment did not seem to be completely unreliable as described. Chu Cheng's memory of the Deadpool game in 2013 was vague before, but now he began to remember it slowly as he tested Deadpool's operation and equipment. The Deadpool he was currently operating was very similar to the mechanism of that game in many places. The main means of attack were divided into long sword strikes and long-range guns, and the shooting had an intelligent auxiliary aiming mechanism, similar to the Deadshot he had used before, but the accuracy of the automatic aiming was worse than that of professionals like Deadshot. The teleportation belt was also very similar to that in that game. In that game, Deadpool's teleportation belt could not only be used to rush and cover, but also for counterattack. Just like Batman's counterattack and Spider-Man's spider sense, when the opponent attacks, press the teleport button, and Deadpool will teleport at the right time to avoid the attack, and then flash behind the opponent to swing the sword to counterattack when the opponent's move is blocked. The Deadpool teleportation effect and usage that Chu Cheng is operating now are quite similar to that of the game, and that is why Chu Cheng can quickly get familiar with it. Of course, it is not exactly the same. At this time, Deadpool handsomely teleported and slashed with a sword to kill the enemy instantly, then stood up calmly, sheathed the sword with a pose that showed the style of a master, then turned around, glanced at the few minions left with a serious face, and slowly said, "Has anyone seen my arm?" Yes, that's right, he lost an arm. As mentioned before, a space transmission belt looks cool and powerful, but the transmission module is not very stable. Sometimes it may let him jump to a place he doesn't want to go, sometimes it may only transmit a part of the body, and sometimes it may miss some parts of the body. After that, the belt's condition seems to be a bit complicated this time, and it is a combination of multiple diseases. Not only did it miss an arm during the transmission, but it also teleported that arm to a random location without a direction. Deadpool turned around, after pretending to be awesome, and cursed in his heart, "Stupid belt, my arm is gone." Chu Cheng saw that the battle was over, and curiously turned on the voice to listen to what he said. As soon as he turned it on, he happened to hear this, and he was happy at that time. A group of frightened killers came back to their senses. A group of people looked at each other, and after a while, a strong man with a face full of flesh dared to point to him. "That, sir? your hand is here. Chu Cheng's screen immediately automatically marked the position of the arm, and it seemed that Deadpool could be controlled to go over and pick it up. But Chu Cheng also found that there seemed to be more than one option. The guidance prompt on the screen indicated that he could also press the interaction button in front of the strong man who was speaking. This felt a bit like the mode in the game that gives players several options, and then the subsequent plot will be affected according to the player's choice. A little curious, Chu Cheng controlled Deadpool to go to the strong man and press the interaction button to see what they would say. Deadpool said, "Very good, you. What's your name?" "Bob, sir." The strong man swallowed his saliva. "Okay Bob, do me a favor, can you help me pick up my hand?" Bob was frightened, and his face turned pale, but when he thought of the monster's performance just now, he dared not disobey. So he cried, and carefully picked up the arm that Deadpool dropped there, and handed it to him happily. "Okay, you are great Bob, I'm beginning to like you." Deadpool took his hand. The interactive key prompt appeared again on the screen in front of Chu Cheng. He thought about it, and decided to press it to see what Deadpool was doing. Then he saw Deadpool took out a tube of special glue from his personal equipment, poured it on the broken part of the arm, and then pushed the broken arm to the broken part, and it was directly glued on. Well, it seems a little crooked. Never mind. It will grow back to the right position by itself. The gangsters seemed to hear the sound of the jaw hitting the ground more than once. Some people even knelt down. Is there such a thing? Your arm's a plug and play, right? Okay, player, I know you must want to say, can't you grow it again? Why pick it up? You don't understand this. Xiaoyao and I have been together for a long time. We have feelings for each other. I can't just do it casually. Deadpool suddenly shut up. The gangsters were so scared that they dared not move. They just watched the red closed weirdo beeping for a long time and suddenly stopped, as if he accidentally bit off his tongue. Shut up. There was silence in the field. In this short period of silence, they were surprised to find that they were a little uncomfortable not hearing this weirdo beeping for a while. Chu Cheng found that he finally found the right way to tell Deadpool to shut up. That is, he opened the microphone. When he entered the microphone mode, Deadpool automatically shut up. First, they persuaded the remaining criminals to surrender voluntarily with little effort. Several people swore to change their ways and helped each other to tie themselves up, unable to move. Then, Deadpool suddenly drew his sword and put it on the neck of the man named Bob without saying a word. Bob was so scared that he trembled all over and raised his hands to beg for mercy. Purpose, Chu Cheng said, you won't break into Jiangdu without a reason. You know whose city this is. There must be a goal, a mission, and the reward is so generous that you think it is worth taking the risk. What is your mission? This guy named Bob looked fierce and muscular, and he seemed to be not easy to mess with. However, he was not even a professional killer. He was just a gangster in a street gang who was paid to do things. How could he have experienced such a terrifying moment? At this moment, Bob was so scared that he was incontinent, and an unknown liquid flowed down his trouser legs. His face turned pale, and he confessed without hesitation. Tell me. I said it was Tony Stark. Chu Cheng was stunned. What? Someone paid us a ridiculous amount of money. The target of assassination is Tony Stark. Chapter 255. No profit no gain. Chu Cheng was stunned for a moment after hearing what the pawn said. Who did you say to kill? He briefly released the microphone button. He chose the button to speak mode and the background voice functions button to speak and free speech modes. Therefore, when the button was released, his microphone mode was turned off and automatically returned to the character's automatic voice mode. So as soon as he released the button, Deadpool immediately continued to beep, as if he couldn't hold it back. Hey buddy, are you kidding me? Kill Tony Stark. Ha 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 ha, let me guess, is your plan to scrape his armor and bore him to death? This reminded Chu Cheng of Stark's bodyguard Happy's lines in the movie Iron Man 3. Happy complained that, whenever he told people that his job was Iron Man's bodyguard, the other party would always laugh, which made the scene very awkward for a while. So Stark considerately transferred his old buddy to the security department. Well, that's what we thought at first. Bob said timidly. We said, assassinate Iron Man? Are you kidding? But the other party told us that Iron Man is invincible, but Tony Stark is not. He has told the world that there is only a flesh and blood under the armor, and it only takes one bullet to kill him. His words are very convincing and sound reasonable. That guy can't wear armor 24 hours a day. As long as you find the right time and the right angle, it is possible to kill the problem with one shot without anyone noticing. Oh, and the other party is really generous, which makes it even more convincing. Bob shrank his head as he spoke, and carefully glanced at the tights weirdo, fearing that if he said something wrong, he would provoke him to be furious and his head would be removed. This monster is not only ridiculously strong, but also seems to have some problems with his brain. Sometimes he speaks nonsense, and it is impossible to understand what he is saying. No one knows if this madman will suddenly go crazy. Chu Cheng. Actually, to be fair, their analysis is not wrong at all. Some people in Marvel Studios next door really think so. After all, this should be considered Iron Man's biggest weakness. Although there may not be anyone in the world who can beat Iron Man, it is different when he is not wearing armor. But the problem now is that they seem to have made a mistake. That is, the Tony Stark they saw is not even a real person. He went offline when he was not needed and stayed in Chu Cheng's character pool. The killers in the world could not find him, even if they dug deep. Taking a step back, even if there is a lucky killer who relies on his luck to shoot Stark in the head when he is not wearing armor and kills him on the spot, it is just a sleep bar in the hero pool. After the progress bar is completed, he will be a hero again the next day. This is called true immortality, because you can't kill a virtual character that does not exist at all. While Chu Cheng was thinking, Deadpool started to grumble again. Dude, do you know what the biggest problem with your boss is? Bob looked at him in fear and shook his head cautiously. He just found the wrong person, man. Deadpool's voice suddenly increased, and Bob, who was already peeing, shuddered again. That idiot paid so much money to kill a fully armed playboy, but he didn't find the only genius killer who could do it. That's me. Got so many beautiful and attractive money, all used to hire a group of drunkards who can't even fly a plane. What a waste. Deadpool is positioned as an anti-hero, described as both good and evil, sometimes saving the world and sometimes doing good things, but he has also received many orders similar to assassinating superheroes. To put it bluntly, this person is more likely to follow his own heart. One loves money and the other loves women. The dream is to have endless money to spend, and endless beautiful girls to sleep with. Bob looked at the reaction of this weirdo, a little scared, and a little surprised. Originally, this weirdo fell from the sky, covered his face, and wore a strange uniform, looking exactly like those weirdos in strange costumes described in the description. And then, the warehouse was full of killers, so they were a little guilty, so they naturally preconceived that this weirdo who came to challenge was some kind of superhero, but he was a little crazy. But now from what he said, it seems that he is actually a colleague. Bob realized that if he wanted to escape today, it might be this one move. So he carefully proposed that, "Sir, considering that our boss was just chopped off by you, it is obvious that we no longer have the ability to continue this mission. So you see, if you are willing, maybe I can introduce you to someone. Do you have a contact method?" This time it was Chu Cheng who asked. No, the other party is very careful, and we don't know who the employer is. The telephone communication is also a one-time payphone, so we don't have a fixed contact method. Bob saw the unfriendly look in the eye, exposed after the Deadpool mask was blown up, and quickly quickened his tone. But, I can take you to the meeting place. We have agreed on a fixed time and place to meet, and there will be a contact waiting for us there. I can tell you the exact time and place. This sounds like a clue. Okay, Deadpool said viciously, but if you lie, don't dare, absolutely don't dare. The harvest is not bad. Chu Cheng successfully got the meeting method. Although he was not worried that Stark would really be killed, he was still a little concerned about this employer. In fact, he had thought about this possibility before. Everything has two sides, especially technological development. Iron Man brought technology and accelerated development, which is undoubtedly a positive benefit to the overall civilization and the general flow of history. But on the contrary, some people's interests will inevitably be damaged. New technologies and new products are bound to affect the leading bigwigs in the corresponding fields, and it is not impossible for some companies and enterprises that just hit the gun to go bankrupt directly. In addition, the development of mature automated production and artificial intelligence will inevitably bring about the problem of unemployment rate, which is also a controversial issue in reality. There was even a time when some people said that programmers are the most painful profession because sooner or later they will write artificial intelligence that can program itself and roll themselves out of work. If you want to develop, there will inevitably be problems. The original Stark has always been troubled by these problems. He has good intentions in doing many things. Generally speaking, he seems to be considering the future of mankind. In the end, it always causes conflicts of one kind or another, and even gives birth to many supercriminals. Tracing the clues, this group of killers came from a city called Vindelany, and the employer should also be there. It seems that a hero needs to go on a business trip. This time, Chu Cheng chose Batman and the newly released Deadpool, a cross-border duo of DC and Marvel. Although Batman and Deadpool have no connection, they are old acquaintances with Deadpool's brothers. Deathstroke and Deadpool are cousins unanimously recognized by Marvel officials. It can be regarded as a small Easter egg of connection, which also makes these two characters special characters throughout the two series. And now with the Watchtower, it is much more convenient to travel across cities. After all, there is a teleportation array, and long distance travel between two cities does not require flying. The Watchtower portal can directly teleport the hero to any corner of the planet. Climbing up the Watchtower, Deadpool was strangely silent for a moment, and then suddenly spoke. "Hey players, don't get excited. Don't block me yet, listen to me, I have a good idea. Absolutely genius." Chu Cheng raised his eyebrows and decided to listen to what he had to say first. "I say, so much money, it would be a waste if we don't make any money? How about this, let's kill Stark once and make the money. After all, he won't really die, right? Anyway, he will be resurrected with full health by this time tomorrow. It would be a waste not to make money." Chu Cheng. The first day of October, another 8,000 words. During the National Day, the monthly tickets are still doubled, and I continue to ask for monthly tickets. Chapter 256 Batman and the Wonder Boy Deadpool. Vindelany, late at night. A brand new city, the same me. "I have a feeling we are going to have a big fight here." Deadpool continued to shout. "I suddenly have a good idea, Batman and the Wonder Boy Deadpool. What do you think? I think we must be a cool combination. By the way, but I also heard that you and that big blue Boy Scout who wears his underwear outside are having an affair. Is it true? Oh my god, I can't erase this picture from my mind." However, no matter how Deadpool attacked Batman, he always stayed still and completely ignored him. At this time, they had already arrived in Vindelany and brought Bob, who voluntarily cooperated with them. Bob was blindfolded and airdropped directly to Vindelany through the teleportation array of the Watchtower. When he closed his eyes and opened them, he realized that he had teleported to Vindelany without feeling anything in just a few seconds. He was even more shocked by the Deadpool in front of him and did not dare to have any extra thoughts at all. Chu Cheng finally ignored Deadpool's idea of assassinating Stark. Deadpool is a madman with a lot of ideas, and he is also a madman who will have a strong reaction whenever he hears about money and children. Of course, his voice lines cannot be taken as serious prompts. To be honest, Chu Cheng is now rich. The funds burned in the Watchtower laboratory every day are astronomical, and they are constantly replenished. After passing the Deathstroke, he went to play with a group of killers and the progress has been pretty good recently. They also set up a secret account for Deathstroke, and now a huge amount of funds have been accumulated in it. In theory, Chu Cheng has no shortage of money for a long time. If he wants, he actually has several secret accounts with astronomical amounts of money that he can use at will. The internet in this world is surprisingly simple for an intelligence like Friday. She can ensure that any penny Chu Cheng spends cannot be tracked. Of course, Chu Cheng has not touched these accounts so far. One is to be safe and keep a low profile to avoid attracting attention. Secondly, his daily time was filled with game tasks, so he had no time to develop other hobbies, and naturally there was nothing to spend money on. His current salary was enough to cover his daily living expenses, eating delicious food, and buying small gadgets, and he could not even spend it all. At this time, on his computer screen, Bob had arrived at the designated handover location with his employer. Because there was no contact information left, the employer would arrange for the contact person to meet with the killer every 2 days to get the latest progress. Now is the time for that meeting. Batman and Deadpool were squatting at a high overlooking point with an excellent view. They left a macro tracker and a bug on Bob to observe the situation over there. After the last upgrade, Chu Cheng also noticed that his physique had reached a very powerful level. He could fully bear to control 2 heroes of Batman and Deadpool at the same time, and he was only tired to a normal degree after working all night. According to Bob, he should have met half an hour ago, but he didn't see anyone on the dark street. It can be seen that Bob is gradually losing his patience. After all, he knew that there was a monster he couldn't afford to offend staring at him, and just thinking about it made his back cold. He looked at his watch every 3 to 5 minutes, always worried that the red-clothed monster would think he was wasting time and would flash over to chop him into pieces. At this moment, Deadpool was already bored and started to draw stick figures. Chu Cheng was amused to see this guy pulling his white underwear out of his zipper and then scribbling on it with a crayon. He drew a stick figure with pointy ears, added a rough cape and a pair of cat-like pointy ears to indicate that this was Batman. Then he drew another stick figure holding 2 knives to indicate that it was himself. The stick figure Batman in the picture was being beaten and crying loudly, and the stick figure Deadpool holding 2 knives was like a god descending from heaven and rescued Batman in time with a wave of killing. "See, I told you we'd be a great team." Deadpool proudly showed Batman his painstaking abstract masterpiece. Batman didn't even look at him. He jumped off the rooftop and opened his cape with a whoosh. The folding thrusters on his back unfolded, and a tail flame pushed him out. "Hey." Deadpool waved his abstract stick drawing on the roof behind him. "I'm not in the car yet." Chu Cheng's operating perspective was now on Batman, and he ignored Deadpool. When teammates in a team state are separated by a certain distance, the teammates will automatically catch up. If they fall behind too far, the teammates will automatically take back the substitute position and appear directly at the player's current position when summoned next time. So it's not a big problem to ignore Deadpool. The reason why Chu Cheng suddenly moved here was that he suddenly found a vehicle with a hostile mark in Batman's detective mode perspective. Or to be more precise, the car has always been there, parked in the dark not far away, and has not moved. Chu Cheng had scanned the car more than once when he looked down, but he had never taken it seriously because there was no hostile mark. Now, the car has been parked there for quite a while, and from the perspective of the driver's seat, he should be able to directly see Bob standing at the meeting point. It is very likely that this is the person Bob is waiting for. If he was just suspicious before, then Chu Cheng had no doubts when the vehicle was marked by the detective mode. Because this means that the master has judged that the person in the car is the enemy. Anyway, so far, based on Chu Cheng's experience in operating from the player's perspective, the master's judgment has never been wrong. I can try to stay in the shadows and track him from the air. He may lead us to find the mastermind behind the scenes. Batman suddenly said, "If we get too close, the other party will find us, and if we are too far, we will easily lose the target." Chu Cheng quickly realized that this was Batman's psychological activity, giving the player game tips in the form of a monologue. He was familiar with this. There was an identical level in Arkham Knight back then, and he had operated Batman to track Penguin's stupid subordinates from the air and destroyed countless dents. Moreover, in the game back then, Batman only had a grappling gun and a hang glider, but now the Batman controlled by Chu Cheng has a real flying power system, and the tracking difficulty has been greatly reduced compared to the game back then, and it is completely stress-free. The car drove all the way, and Batman kept a distance and hung behind it. In a short while, he found the place. The car entered the underground parking lot of a building, and the building was immediately marked with a hostile sign in the field of vision in the detective mode. Batman airborne on the rooftop and conducted a preliminary scan through the wall perspective. There were den seat sources, and there were a lot of people inside. From the results of the thermal imaging of the movements and sound source amplification capture, it seemed that someone was singing, someone was sitting on the sofa with a girl drinking and chatting, and someone was dancing on the dance floor. It might be a nightclub or a similar place, but it was not an ordinary nightclub. Further scanning showed that there were armed security guards standing guard in almost all directions, and the number was abnormally large. Iceberg Club? A place name quickly emerged in Chu Cheng's mind. The nightclub of the Penguin in Gotham City is frequented by celebrities and gangsters in Gotham. Many bigwigs keep their money in his underground vault. It is known as the safest place in Gotham. In addition to being visited by Batman 3 times a week on average, this place feels a bit like that. The detective mode has a limited field of vision, and this is a large building, so Chu Cheng had to move around the periphery of the building for most of the time before marking out all the armed personnel in the entire building. Then he found that the guards here were really strict, with more than 30 armed security guards. It was Chu Cheng who had just arrived and came to this city for the first time. Otherwise, places like Jiangdu would have been visited by Batman and all the staff would have surrendered. Mark at least 6 intrusion routes, sir. Friday said, with Batman's ability, there are at least 3 locations where you can enter the person in charge's office without alerting anyone. It sounds like a good idea, but we are a new team today. Chu Cheng smiled. Let's try a new tactic. As he spoke, he had switched the operating character to Deadpool again. Deadpool jumped out onto the roof again. Ha, you are indeed my player. You have good eyesight. That's right, Batman and the Wonder Boy Deadpool, go. He drew his sword and made a pose similar to going to war. But Deadpool didn't know it yet. He might not like the player's new tactics very much. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 257 New Arm. Pa. The lights went out, and the people who were reveling and drinking on the dance floor were stunned. Some people began to complain, dissatisfied that they spent the most expensive money, but did not get the best service. If this was in Jiangdu, the people in the hall would have begun to realize that something was wrong. But it was obvious that when Delaney had not experienced the fear of being dominated by bats, and the slow-witted people in the nightclub did not realize the seriousness of the problem, just thinking it was an ordinary power outage. But soon someone also found a problem. The owner of this nightclub is Nakagoi Yingchen, one of the most powerful people in the city. This place has been operating under his responsibility for 10 years, and there has never been any problem during this period. Even if the whole area is out of power, there should be a backup generator here. But the generator did not start. Then the door opened. The security guard at the door noticed a masked man in red walking in, but because of the power outage, he only saw a vague outline. One of the security guards stepped forward and blocked him. Private club, please show your invitation, sir. And please take off your mask. Before he finished speaking, he saw a flash of sword in front of him. His pupils shrank, and his body tilted, and fell to the ground. Sorry, what did you say? Deadpool gently swung his sword in his hand. I couldn't hear it, because of the noise. Enemy attack. All the security guards were immediately alarmed. The first to come up were the 3 guards at the door. He immediately tried to draw his gun, but Deadpool was faster than them. There were 3 gunshots, and the 3 men fell to the ground howling. The club members suddenly became agitated, and the hostess screamed, "No killing, okay, the rules of the bat, only for today. Who made us want to be the Wonder Boy?" Deadpool said to himself. A security guard behind him sneaked up and shot Deadpool in the head. It must be said that his gun is quite accurate for a miscellaneous soldier. Although Deadpool stood still, this gun really hit the head. The bullet penetrated Deadpool's forehead with swelling blood, and the flesh and blood were nailed to the wall along with the shrapnel. However, Deadpool seemed to be unaware and calmly turned around, as if he didn't even look, and just raised his hand to shoot. The security guard screamed and fell down immediately. Don't worry, you won't die, but you'd better call for emergency treatment. Deadpool casually changed the magazine and muttered, If this guy loses too much blood, it can't be considered my fault, right? Bats can't blame me for the traffic jam of emergency treatment, right? As he spoke, he held a sword in one hand and a gun in the other, turned around and rushed towards the other security guards under fire. The few people were shocked and hurriedly raised their guns to shoot. Several bullets passed through their bodies with blood, but it was useless. Deadpool raised his long sword, and 3 people fell down at the shaking point of the sword. Then he raised his gun and fired a burst, and 2 more people were knocked to the ground. It seemed that he aimed casually, but he could accurately knock down the vital parts, while deliberately avoiding the fatal parts. If it were someone else, it would definitely be impossible for him to have such a shooting skill. Brothers, can you cooperate? Deadpool shook his head. I probably only have one chance to impress my boss dressed as a bat, and I don't want to ruin this interview. So why don't you just pretend to be scared by me and surrender, so that you can get less bullets and I can get the job smoothly. The security guards were still shouting, and the hall was in chaos. Another team of new security guards rushed to the door and shot at him without saying a word. More teams were on the way. Okay. Deadpool waved his sword casually, ignoring the bullet holes that were constantly piercing his body. No one has ever taken this suggestion seriously. At this time, the guests and girls who were closer were already scared out of their wits. Most of them were civilized people after all, and had never seen a gun fired at close range, let alone a freak in a tights who was talking to himself with his head blown through. All the security guards had been alarmed. The security guards in the hall were moving quickly towards Deadpool, and the security guards scattered at other posts were also approaching quickly. Hold on, Team 3 is coming down, over. A team of security guards hurried down the fire escalator from the 3rd floor. But no one noticed that when the last person in their team passed the corner of the escalator, a bat suddenly flew out from the darkness in the corner of the ceiling and pressed the back of the last person's head, causing the person's forehead to come into close contact with the escalator, and fainted on the spot. The death guard at the gate was having a passionate gunfight with someone. The continuous gunshots and the screams of the guests were deafening in the closed space, almost covering up all the sounds. In addition, this team of security guards was eager to support their teammates, and no one noticed that someone was sneaking in the back row behind them. Batman killed or knocked one person out in a second, and then pressed one hand on the handrail of the stairs. The whole person flew up and jumped down the stairs. He kicked in the air and hit another person in the face with a dull roundhouse kick. The latter didn't see anything clearly, and his eyes went black, and he fell down. Only then did the team realize his presence, but it was too late. Batman jumped into the middle of the queue, knocked one person down with a punch, broke another person's cheekbone with an elbow, and kicked the last person down the escalator without looking back. When Chu Cheng saw this scene on the screen, he was thinking that it was a miracle that he could survive after being kicked from the 3rd floor. But then he saw that the unconscious man stopped abruptly in the middle of the fall and was actually hanging in the air with a load-bearing fiber hanging from his body. Yes, the master is still rigorous in his actions. One team took care of it, and he directly controlled Batman to jump from the edge of the ring, opened his cape, and ejected the thrusters, and flew straight to the second team of security guards. He kicked one of the security guards in this team horizontally with a gliding kick, and hit the wall with a bang. The remaining few people were surprised, and when they turned around, Batman had already taken care of 2 of them with a knife and a swinging punch respectively. The man standing a little further away turned his gun around and prepared to shoot, but before he could calibrate, Batman's dart had already left his hand. Darts are Batman's best equipment, and with the power boost of the suit, the dart was even more powerful, penetrating the man's shoulder and nailing him to the wall behind him. The man screamed. Batman flew forward and kicked him in the head, causing his eyes to go black and his screams to stop. This is called physical anesthesia. As long as you shoot hard enough in the head, the patient will not feel any pain. The only side effect is that the patient may not feel anything. This is a tactic Chu Cheng has formulated for this team. Deadpool taunts and attacks the front to attract all attention. After all, he has unlimited health and a mean mouth, and his tankiness and taunts are full, so he is definitely the best choice for mount. Then while Deadpool is fighting the front, the master can use his expertise to steal the back row and steal a group. Because the gunshots are loud, he doesn't have to worry about the noise problem, and he can do it as efficiently as possible. Besides, Deadpool is a bit mean and his performance is scary. Not everyone can spare the energy to pay attention to the monster behind him when facing a monster that is riddled with bullets. I suddenly feel that this is a bit unfair. Deadpool flipped behind the bunker while facing the gun line, slashed a man with his right sword, and shot another in the opposite direction with his left hand, still muttering, "We took all the bullets, and Batman took all the heads. I always feel like I'm losing out." Indeed, although Deadpool basically ignored the bullets, after all, the enemy would dodge and resist when breaking through from the front, and the speed was naturally much slower than that of attacking from behind. Basically, most of the heads were taken by Batman. And I don't know if it's an illusion, but occasionally when Chu Cheng glanced at Deadpool, he felt that the shooting skills of the soldiers on the opposite side seemed to be more accurate than usual. Maybe there is some magical law at work. When the minions in American comics shoot at Batman and Green Arrow, their shooting skills are simply sunset red, and the central idea is a human body outline. When facing Captain America, his shooting skills seemed to have reached a new level. He was very accurate, but all of his shots hit the shield. When he ran to the set opposite Wolverine and Deadpool, the minions seemed to have transformed into deadly shooters, and every shot hit the target. You don't know whether this minions are more skilled, or Deadpool has a magnetic booth that attracts ammunition. In short, it's hard to tell. Deadpool kept mumbling, while the managed AI continued to automatically find the next target, and slashed at it. So far, almost no one could take his sword, but this person in front of him was different. The Black Shadow dodged the sword to the side, and then grabbed it with his backhand. Deadpool raised his arm to block it, and the opponent slapped his forearm. Bang! Deadpool was now managed by AI. He had been using the Washan for a long time, and didn't expect that there was an elite hidden among the minions. In addition, Deadpool's blood-locking body was relatively slow in attack warning, so he was hit by the slap. The invisible impact spread, and the strong blast immediately blew Deadpool's arm apart, and the shockwave threw him out. Deadpool rolled twice, and when he stood up, most of his arm had been blown off. It looked shocking, but in fact, his health bar still had a lot of blood. Deadpool jumped up, the eyes on the mask moved, and he immediately shouted, "Hey, I just got a new arm." Chapter 258. But he killed. "Dude, you owe me an arm." Deadpool yelled, while using his free arm to pick up the long sword and thrust it straight. Deadpool rushed forward and broke the arm while blood was gushing out. The scene was shocking. The onlookers were horrified, and some ladies fainted from fear. It was a horror scene that could be called mental pollution. This weirdo can't be killed. Can't he even feel pain? Stand still, little guy. Look, I'm going to sprinkle some dust in your eyes. My best buddy said so. Deadpool said as he thrust 3 times in a row. But maybe because it was AI managed, the operation and awareness were slightly lacking compared to when the player was in the battle personally, and the Black Shadow was so fierce that he avoided all of them. When Deadpool thrust the third sword, the opponent saw the right time, and flicked the edge of the sword he handed over. But there was a loud bang, as if the air exploded, and the blade in Deadpool's hand was blown out of his hand, and broke into 2 pieces. In the original work, although Deadpool occasionally used adamantium alloy blades or carbon steel longswords that restrained Wolverine's self-healing factor, he did not use them often. The 2 swords in his regular configuration were only made of relatively excellent alloys. They were extremely sharp among ordinary weapons, but there was nothing special about them, and they were not artifacts. They would break every few days. Deadpool's eyes moving on the mask vividly showed his angry expression, as if his face was broken. "Dude, you also broke my sword." "Very good. Now this has risen to a personal grudge." Just at this time, Batman flew down from the dark hall almost silently, and kicked the Black Shadow in front of Deadpool with his feet together. At this time, Chu Cheng had dealt with all the enemies marked by the detective mode. Seeing that Deadpool seemed to have hit a hard stub, he turned around and swooped over to help. The man was concentrating on fighting Deadpool, and it was difficult for him to dodge when he heard the wind in the dark. In addition, he could only hear the rustling sound of his cape, but he couldn't see in the dark. so he could only turn around and crossed his arms in front of him and took the push glide kick dolly and was immediately kicked into the air by Batman. Batman adjusted his posture and the engine behind him reversed to quickly slow down. As he landed with his cape folded, he raised his hand and raised his grappling gun and fired a shot, hitting the shadow that he kicked into the air. The grappling gun retracted and the huge pulling force immediately pulled the shadow back from the air to Batman. The man reacted quickly and he adjusted his position in the air and slapped him with his backhand. But before he could slap, a big counterattack sign appeared on his forehead. Batman slapped his wrist with precise timing and deflected the attack and then elbowed him in the face. The shadow was immediately smashed into the air and with a clang, it broke a table in half. The nearby guests screamed and stepped back. Batman, one of the guests, came out and looked at them with a surprised expression. The detective mode was activated and Chu Cheng could see the other party clearly with the help of the night vision function. Felix? Chu Cheng was stunned for a moment and then he realized that the one who was rolled on the ground by Batman's combo was the shadow, Felix's phantom. Felix was wearing an evening dress and looked like he was enjoying a nightclub. He looked at Batman in astonishment and then looked at Deadpool next to Batman. So, is this weirdo an infected person? Felix gradually opened his mouth. Wait, is he with you? Huh? Have you ever seen an infected person like me who is handsome, good at fighting, and loved by everyone? Deadpool was dissatisfied. Felix. Thinking about it this way, it seems no wonder that he made a mistake. Just like this, a guy in tights suddenly kicked the door in without saying a word. He had the ability to heal instantly, even when he was beaten to a pulp, and he had extraordinary physical abilities. In addition, he was not very smart and talked a lot of nonsense. It was easy to recognize him as an infected person. It was just that his attributes were a bit outrageous. Felix's expression suddenly became strange when he found out that he was a teammate at this moment. He carefully looked at Deadpool's broken hand that was blown away by him. Buddy, I think you have to compensate me for an arm. Deadpool yelled. Oh, and my knife, that's not cheap. Sorry, I didn't know. Felix felt guilty when he found out that the other party was not an infected person. I promise I will do my best. Don't pay attention to him, he will recover. Batman said in a deep voice. What are you doing here? I'm investigating a case. The clues traced back to Vindelany. It's not a case of the 9th Division. Some personal matters that I have to figure out myself. As he said that, Felix had already recalled the Phantom, and at the same time, he carefully peeked at Deadpool's arm. He was surprised to find that the arm that was blown off by him seemed to be growing back now, and the blood red tissue was repairing itself at a speed visible to the naked eye. In such a short time, a large part of it had grown. Felix suspected that he had seen it wrong. What kind of self-healing speed is this? This made Felix feel that he was a little stupid for thinking of arranging the best treatment conditions for the other party just now. At this rate, when the ambulance took him back to the hospital, he would have grown a new arm before entering the ward. Let's talk later. Batman said, we still have things to do. Chu Cheng certainly didn't forget what they came here for. All the armed targets marked by the detective mode before entering have now been cleared, and it's time to talk to the person in charge. Everyone in the hall was scared, and they avoided the 3 people like the plague god, wishing they were invisible and the other party couldn't see them. But they were not interested in other people here. Oh, except Deadpool. As he passed by, he used his intact hand to rub the 2 bunny girls hard, scaring them to scream. The person in charge of the nightclub, Nakagawa Takashi, was in his office. Nakagawa was a gentle bald man wearing a pair of gold-rimmed glasses, which seemed a bit inconsistent with his identity. When his personal bodyguard heard the gunshot, he had already rushed out to join the group of scumbags and was killed together. Now he was the only one left in the office. Of course, he also had a gun in the office, but after secretly glancing at the situation outside, he wisely chose not to use the gun, but sat obediently in his seat and waited for them to come to the door. Gentlemen. When the door panel was broken, Nakagawa sat in the chair behind the desk and said leisurely, welcome. What wind blew a big man like Batman from Jiangdu to a small place like ours? Batman walked in first without saying a word. We are all civilized people. Why don't we sit down and talk properly? Let's talk it over. Let's talk it over. The latter half of the words had turned into a sharp scream. Batman pulled him out from behind the desk without saying anything and threw him headfirst onto the floor. Nakagawa's head buzzed and he felt a little dizzy. His dizzy head had just left the ground for a few centimeters when Batman slapped him back. Someone wants to assassinate Tony Stark. Batman's gloomy voice exploded in his ears. I want a name. What? I don't know. I've never heard of it. With a crisp sound, he felt that he had broken a finger. The pain made his face pale instantly, and beads of sweat broke out. Okay, we helped contact the killer and arrange the action. But we are just intermediaries. You see, you don't know the rules of this industry. Some employers are unwilling to reveal their identities, and we won't ask. So I can't tell you. Lie. Batman's low voice sounded, followed by another snap, and Nakagawa screamed again. He trembled with pain at first, but gritted his teeth, and held on for a moment, and soon tried to calm his breathing. He was pinned to the ground, and he forced his head to force out a smile. I've heard of you, Batman. Nakagawa said, you don't kill people. But if I leak even a word about that big shot, I'll be dead. So you can't scare me, Batman. No matter what you do, I won't tell. Batman's face under the mask looked expressionless. Then, to Nakagawa's disbelief, Batman actually let go of his hand and stepped aside. You're right, I don't kill people, he said coldly. But he does. Deadpool's eyes lit up. Finally, I can let go. Swish. Deadpool drew his sword from its sheath, and the silver sword light illuminated the entire room. Chapter 259. Tell me about your plan. Ugh. The severe pain almost made Nakagawa faint. He looked down and found that the weirdo had chopped off his left pinky finger with the sword, and blood was pouring out. At this moment, Chu Cheng's operating perspective had changed to Deadpool. Dude, stop howling. Deadpool pointed to his broken arm. If he didn't show it to others now, it might grow back soon. Your people have made dozens or hundreds of holes in my body, and you have also cut off my hand. You are just a little bit scared? To be honest, Deadpool's appearance was indeed a bit scary. Just now, he had just fought at the gate. The amount of blood he lost was enough to carry 10 people away. Now he was covered in blood from head to toe, and with the broken arm, the flesh and blood were churning, and it was rushing out in an overgrown posture. The picture was indeed quite convincing. This weirdo would really chop him off without hesitation. Nakagawa had no doubt at all. Okay, I'll tell you. The double torture of pain and fear finally broke through his psychological defenses. It's Daedalus Reed. As he spoke, Chu Cheng's super secretary had already entered the name. Friday, who is he talking about? I think it's this person, sir. Friday displayed the search results. Chu Cheng looked closely and couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Mayor Daedalus. The Daedalus Reed that was searched was the mayor of Vindelany. Yes, the mayor of this city. Nakagawa's breathing became more and more rapid, and he said with difficulty, but do you think he is just a mayor? That's just an appearance. The truth is far more than that. At least half of the people in this nightclub can tell you the truth. Nakagawa paused and coughed twice. Are you telling us that the mayor is a lunatic who hired a killer to kill people? Felix frowned. Yes, and more than that. Daedalus is not only the apparent ruler of this city, he is also the king of the underground world. We all know this, but no one usually mentions it. Because in this city, people who know the truth know when to shut up, and talking too much can easily bring disaster. So we don't always talk about it. But, assassinating Iron Man? Felix frowned in confusion. Why? Nakagawa took a deep breath. You can't imagine how many fields the mayor's private industries are involved in, right? He groaned. Technology, electronics, energy. That guy called Iron Man has touched countless people's cakes overnight. There are definitely many people on this planet who want him dead. It's just that Mayor Daedalus' situation is particularly serious. Almost all the industries he is involved in have been impacted by that Iron Man. And this is just the first round. We all know that this is just the beginning. That guy threatened to customize the future and to transform the existing system in all aspects, so it can be predicted that this situation will only get worse in the future. Those big wigs who are the first to be affected will naturally not sit idly by. I think if it were me, I would probably be as intolerable as him. Point but that Tony Stark is doing good things. Felix felt absurd. His technology has helped more people and promoted the progress of all mankind. Yeah, I think so too. Nakagawa said dully, besides that everyone doesn't actually care about any major issues in the development of civilization. People like Mayor Daedalus don't care about how technology will benefit the people. He only cares about one thing, that is, the money in his pocket is being stolen. No one has ever been able to steal money from him, so he has to fight back, simple as that. The pain has gradually become numb, and when it reaches a certain level, it doesn't hurt that much. Okay, I've told you everything I know. Nakagawa gritted his teeth. Is that enough now? Chu Cheng's perspective has switched back to Batman. The emergency department will arrive at the scene in 1 minute. Batman said coldly, you will survive. But if we happen to find out that you have forgotten to say anything, then you will pray that you will die at this moment. Nakagawa's breathing almost stagnated, and he dared not breathe. The three left the nightclub. Within a minute, the sheriff's department and the emergency department surrounded the scene. You mentioned that you were investigating a case, avoiding the eyes and ears, and going to a deserted place. Batman looked at Felix. Well, I guess so. Felix sighed softly, not knowing where to start. This time it was about his family. He found out that it was a drug-selling enterprise of the Intelligence Bureau. He refused to communicate with his family, but he did begin to be interested in the family business. It was not that he had the idea of taking over the burden and going back to be a rich second generation, but he realized that he had never had the idea of knowing in the past, and only now did he realize that he knew nothing about his family. Then he saw these transaction records that made him doubt everything around him for the first time. He saw some business dealings between Grove Group and Nakagawa Yinchen's industry. This shocked him. He originally thought that his family was a top secret agency under the guise of a pharmaceutical factory. He didn't feel wrong about it. The only thing that caused a gap between him and his family was that everyone was hiding the truth from him. But making a deal with a group of criminals? He was shocked and couldn't understand. So he went to his uncle and tried to get some explanations, such as telling him that those were just disguises for some greater purpose or something else. But it didn't. All he got from his uncle was a colder reality. Business is business, Felix, Garrison said to him earnestly. We do business with anyone who's right. That's why we are so big. The transactions themselves are completely legal. They are just regular transactions. But it's not clean money, Felix said. They're criminals, and you already know that. You're the Intelligence Bureau. Don't tell me you don't know the details of the other party. Besides, it's not a secret at all. Garrison looked at him for a moment. Yes, we know, he admitted, but it doesn't matter. The company, this organization exists for more important things. Street crime is never on our radar. We can tell the difference, and I hope you can too. The result of that conversation, let's just say it was not a pleasant one. Some cases involve criminals from Vendelani. It's not a big deal, but there are just some things I want to confirm with my own eyes. Felix didn't elaborate on these, just vaguely skipped over them and changed the subject. Now it seems that all these questions have to be answered by the mayor, Mr. Daedalus. So I guess we should just happen to be on the way next. Mayor's residence. Vendelani had started to rain. Lightning streaked across the sky, and the rain poured down. Mayor Daedalus stood in front of the French window, and the rain flowed down the window, as if washing his phantom in the glass. He received a call. Nightclub? Nakagawa's kid. Daedalus listened to the report of his spy and frowned slightly. Batman, here. Vendelani? Ah, okay, I get it. No need to pay special attention. Everything is operating as usual. Don't worry, his next stop should be me. I will handle it. The mayor hung up the phone. Something told him that a battle was coming. It's more efficient than I thought. Daedalus seemed to be talking to himself. He narrowed his eyes. Then it seems that we should speed up the progress of the plan. Just as he spoke, a flash of lightning flashed, and the pale light briefly illuminated the office room. Batman had stood in the shadow of the room without anyone noticing, his gaze cold. Now, a hoarse voice sounded from the darkness. Tell me your plan. Chapter 260 The Dead Ancient. Batman. Daedalus turned his head and glanced at Batman in the dark. I admit, this surprised me a little. I didn't expect to see you here. I thought your activities were limited to Jiangdu. You should have thought of this when you reached into my territory. Batman said coldly, you want to kill Tony Stark. Ah, your people, I guess. Daedalus said, his tone became a little stiff. You see, this is the problem. You guys, wearing masks, capes, and some wearing fancy high-tech equipment. Recently, there is a hammer swinger, I heard. He turned around and looked directly at Batman. Half of his body was still in the dark. Look at you, with that savior-like attitude. Who do you think you are? Jesus? Prometheus? No, you are just another group of invaders, the cancer of this world. You are essentially invaders and predators. So this is your plan. Batman said calmly, are we the target? That's just the first step. Daedalus did not deny it, but just chuckled. But it's just the beginning. I already have tremendous power in this society that ordinary people can't imagine, but that's not enough. The Earth Star is ushering in a new era, and changes will come. Only those who can grasp this process can grasp the future and have a place in the new world. Interesting, I think so too. Chu Cheng said this without turning on the microphone, and the perspective on his screen was no longer on Batman. Now he was operating Deadpool. Whoosh. Light blue ripples. Energy appeared out of thin air behind Daedalus. Deadpool was in midair, waving his sword, dragging a silver light towards the mare. Teleportation. It seems that someone's space transmission belt is quite powerful at this moment, and it didn't teleport to the wrong place, and didn't lose any limbs. Deadpool had already made a sword swinging action before he flashed. When his figure emerged from the energy ripples, the sword had already cut halfway. The charging and sword swinging actions were completed before the teleportation. It was almost a sneak attack that was sure to hit, and ordinary people could not avoid it at all. Guess who got a free beheading package today? Friendly reminder, it's not the senior sister. Deadpool was only halfway through his complaints, and his movement suddenly stopped. Daedalus didn't even turn his head, but it was clear that a tentacle suddenly passed through Deadpool's chest, picked up his whole body, and threw it aside like throwing garbage. Ah. Deadpool knocked over the computer on the desk and fell to the floor with the monitor. But he got up again with a roll, and the hole in his chest had been filled with new flesh and blood during the roll. This change also caught Chu Cheng off guard. Friday, shouldn't he be just an ordinary person? No one has ever said that this guy has anything special. Both Nakagawa Takashi's confession and the intelligence they retrieved showed that Daedalus Reed was a mayor, and secretly he might be an underground king, the emperor of Vindelany, a guy who was good at both black and white. But no one has ever said that he had superpowers. There is indeed no clue that the other party has any extraordinary abilities, sir. Chu Cheng's keyboard speed was very fast. The moment Deadpool was thrown out, he had already switched to Batman's perspective and rushed towards Daedalus. But Daedalus raised his fist and punched down without even looking. Boom. The punch fell, and the floor of the office under everyone's feet suddenly cracked, and the floor tiles rolled back in the direction of the force. The rubble was crushed into slag, and was carried in the impact cyclone, and rolled towards Batman with overwhelming force. Batman's attack was blocked, and the strong wind carried countless slag, and flew towards him. His cape flapped open, and his thrusters ignited, and he soared into the air, floating backwards to avoid the sharp edge before landing lightly. This doesn't look like no extraordinary ability. I caught him. It was Shadow who spoke. Shadow clung to the ceiling the whole time, like a flexible gecko. Although Daedalus's punch was powerful, the amplitude was too large, and the movement was exaggerated, which inevitably revealed flaws. Shadow saw an opportunity, and fell straight down from the ceiling, pressing Daedalus's forehead. Bullshit, I caught him. The one who shouted here was Deadpool. Deadpool, who was hosted by AI, flew out and automatically locked onto Daedalus standing in front of him, and drew his sword and swung it. Shadow and Deadpool locked onto Mayor Daedalus at the same time, but the two of them attacked in different directions. There were two Mayors Daedalus, standing in two different places in the room. However, neither of them could catch him. Seeing Shadow slap him on the forehead, the palm of his hand suddenly went straight through He released his explosive ability, but it only detonated the air with a bang, and the reverse thrust blew himself back. What the hell? Deadpool did the same. He raised his sword, but the sword pierced through the air in front of him, and the blade sank into the half of the floor under his feet that had not collapsed yet, exploding bright sparks. Before they could come to their senses, they were both hit by something. Shadow smashed the cabinet against the wall with a bang, and Deadpool smashed a huge vase. That looks expensive. Deadpool was heartbroken. This thing looks like an antique. If I take it away and sell it after this fight, how much can it sell for? Only Chu Cheng's Batman perspective had already turned on the detective mode. The warning sign appeared from behind him, and he pressed the counterattack button without thinking. Batman shrank back, turned around without looking, and slapped Daedalus, who had appeared behind him at some point. Daedalus' upper body trembled slightly after bearing the force of the slap, and he raised his hand to grab Batman without stopping. But Batman's shoulders sank, and Daedalus was just like grabbing a slippery piece of skin, which Batman dodged lightly. Daedalus couldn't grab it, and was about to follow up, but he immediately realized something was wrong. He looked down, and found that a bat bomb had been stuck on his chest, and the danger indicator light was flickering. Then there was a bang, and a ball of scorching fire exploded. Batman protected his face with his cape, and the high temperature flames and the impact of the explosion threw Daedalus out, but he only rolled twice and got up. Chu Cheng noticed that Daedalus' getting up action was not as natural as that of ordinary people, nor was it a martial arts action like a master's carp jump that would catapult him to start. His movements looked a little stiff, a bit like there was a spring on his back, and a bit like his whole body was pulled up by some external force. And there was more to it than that. With the power of the bat bomb, a normal person should be blown to pieces after being fired, but the mayor seemed fine. But when he stood up, Chu Cheng could clearly see that there was some kind of flexible and twisted material on his face, chest and thighs that was automatically repairing itself. Something that was not unfamiliar to them. Friday, did you see it clearly? Of course, it was always clear, sir. Friday said, your idea is probably right. Do you know what I'm thinking? Of course. You're thinking that it might be the T-Shield, and it is indeed. She said. In addition, the opponent showed a suspected ability to create illusions during the battle just now. It's like a holographic projection to confuse the opponent. It's like point like an ancient who should have died. Chu Cheng said. As he spoke, a ball of T-Shield material was released from Daedalus. The thing was connected to his shoulder and gradually formed in a regular circle next to his head. Then a structure similar to facial features gradually appeared, making it look like Daedalus had grown a second head from his neck. They recognized that face. The Ancient Usak. Chapter 261, Trying Out New Toys. The Ancient One Usak? Shouldn't this guy have been absorbed by Ophelia? Yes, it's me. The face of Usak began to speak. During this time, he turned his head to look at the head of Daedalus next to him. This feels a bit strange. I didn't know that we could do this before. In fact, no Ancient One may have ever done this. But now I have done it, in a human body, sharing a body. The ancients and humans merged. This made Chu Cheng feel a little fresh. He guessed that, if the old thief Miyazaki was here, he would be very excited about this. My mission should have ended. I dedicated everything I had to Lady Ophelia, and that should have been my last mission. But she managed to keep me alive. There is no one else, no Lady Ophelia, only me, left here alone. At first I was puzzled. I didn't understand why she left only me, but now I understand, because my mission is not over yet. I still have the last task to complete. A firm expression appeared on that face. I want to revive her, at any cost. That's impossible. Felix said from behind. She's already dead. Not like you guys who fell into hibernation and waited for rebirth. This time she's completely dead. No, the ancients are immortal. Usak shouted stubbornly. Yes, they must be. I just don't know the method yet, but I will find it, and I will bring her back. Even if I have to allow myself to become as inferior as humans. Watch your words, old man. Daedalus interrupted him, and at the same time, he opened his 5 fingers and shot out 3 tentacles. Shadow withdrew with Felix. Batman stepped forward to avoid, and Deadpool swung his knife. to cut off the tentacle that shot at him. "Are you wearing the same pants?" Deadpool yelled. "Oh my god, this is too immoral. This is a deal. It gives me its power, and I will fulfill its wishes." Daedalus shouted. "I have never felt so powerful as I do now." Chu Cheng saw that his entire arm began to change, turning into a structure similar to the Tis shield, and then turned into a huge iron hammer. The ground under his feet finally couldn't bear the weight and was blasted to pieces, and everyone in the room fell to the lower level. At the same second of falling, the whole room changed. The building disappeared in an instant, replaced by a magnificent palace. The shape is simple, but if you look closely, it is different from the style of any dynasty in history. The double-edged roof of glazed tiles, the mirror-like smooth hall reflects the clear pearl light, the gold-rimmed columns support the dome, and the top is engraved with vivid reliefs. Everyone fell into this palace. Everyone felt like they had experienced 9 days and 9 nights of falling from heaven, and fell to the ground in a mess. Well, except Batman. He opened his cape to cushion the fall and landed calmly, maintaining the elegance of a knight as always. After all, he was the only one who could fly. The palace was extremely open, and there was no end in sight in almost all directions. Unknown particles floated in the air, mixed with bright petals, all over the sky. The particles emitted a faint golden glow, and floated at a very slow speed, as if this scene was deliberately frozen by someone, revealing a dreamy visual effect. They looked like they were in the boundless void, and a magnificent palace was suddenly built on a platform with no support. This was an illusion, all false, just a visual deception. In fact, they were still in the building, falling into a room on the lower floor. The only center of the palace, the end of the field of vision, was a curtain. The golden glow projected a graceful outline on the curtain. Chu Cheng soon realized that it was Ophelia, or at least her illusion. It was like the kind of story made up by humans to awaken a sleeping princess. Batman suddenly turned around, and as if by instinct, he threw a dart through the air. Ripples suddenly appeared in the empty place in the palace, and Daedalus' figure emerged out of thin air. He reacted quickly and casually pinched the thumb and middle finger of his right hand, and the bat dart was immediately pinched between his 2 fingers. Boom. The bat dart exploded close to the opponent's face, but it seemed that it failed to penetrate the opponent's skin. Half of Delik's face was blown into a blur, but his cheeks and facial features were distorted. It briefly transformed back to the structure of the Tis shield, and then quickly recovered. "You can see me, Batman. It seems that you have mastered the skills to attack this ability." Daedalus maintained a confident smile. "This part is worthy of recognition, I will admit this." At this time, Usak was in a state that was unprecedented among any ancient. In the past, no one of his kind had ever been able to merge with a human, as if they had changed each other at the level of body composition. In fact, Usak's current state should have been extremely bad. Not to mention showing his true form, even maintaining a human posture was difficult. He never expected that, after merging with a human, they seemed to have unexpectedly improved and exerted a power that was far from possible in his current state. But there was a price. The price was that Usak had almost lost control of his own body. He could only decide whether to give power to the host, but could not decide what Daedalus would do after gaining power. So there was a deal between them. Usak gave Daedalus the power to pursue everything he wanted and build an empire even larger than the current one. In exchange, Daedalus would become his hands and feet to fulfill his wishes. In the past, this would have been almost impossible for the ancients to accept. That meant that he would not only have to share a body with a humble human, but also give everything he had to him and compromise with him in order to achieve his goal. Most of the ancients would think that it was an insult to their noble race and a trampling on their dignity. Although they were becoming more and more like humans, although they didn't even know whether they were dead or alive, they still had the glory of being an ancient. But Usak was willing to give up even that. The meaning of his existence was for Ophelia. He had already given up his life once for her, or at least something close to life. There was nothing he couldn't let go of. "Drink," Daedalus shouted, shaking his arms. More tentacles burst out, some simply stabbed like guns, some stretched out and turned into swords at the ends to cut, and some turned into hammers, sweeping towards everyone present like a tidal wave. Friday, Chu Cheng said as he dodged. Let's prepare for something explosive. But you didn't bring a stronger hero with you this time. Friday said, if necessary, you can withdraw from the battle and go back to change heroes. No, that's not necessary. We won't use Thor or Iron Man today. This is a good opportunity. Our new project has been completed, right? You mean, okay, if you want, sir. Of course, Chu Cheng smiled. Activate the Iron Bat for me and throw it directly from the watchtower to the battlefield to see how effective Stark's new toy is. Chapter 262, Iron Bat Attacks. Chu Cheng gave the order, and Friday immediately activated the code. The watchtower far away in the orbit of the Earth star also responded immediately. The equipment compartment opened automatically under the control of AI, and the dark flight cabin swooped down from the watchtower. It dragged a dazzling tail flame, and its speed was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, it broke through the atmosphere and locked onto the building of Windelany. In an instant, like a black lightning of steel, the flight cabin smashed the glass of the French window and rushed into the battlefield with a clang. From the perspective of the parties involved, they were actually still in that huge ancient palace, a virtual environment similar to a holographic projection. The black flight cabin seemed to crash in from the void, and a ripple was stirred in the hall. The flight cabin rushed into it domineeringly with glass fragments flying all over the sky. It had begun to deform when it flew into the air. This part mostly borrows the design of the Mark 7 armor that Iron Man debuted in the final battle of Avengers 1. It is usually in the form of a flight cabin, which can be launched to the battlefield at a very high speed and deployed at high speed by laser guidance. When the flight cabin was halfway, it had already stretched out its arms from both sides, and the thrusters that were originally folded at the tail also stretched out two mechanical legs. The thrusters were deployed at the bottom of the boots. A black helmet with a pair of pointed ears was ejected from the front end, and the visor looked dark and deep. Iron Bat armor. The armor tailored for Chu Cheng can only be equipped by him, or it can be unmanned. Of course, Chu Cheng, who adheres to the principle of playing to the extreme as the first principle, naturally will not really wear the armor and fly out to the front line, so he chose the latter. The armor still uses the same unmanned driving technology as Iron Man, which is divided into two types. The first type is like the Mark series armor that the entire army dispatched in the final battle of Iron Man 3, which is operated by artificial intelligence. In the movie, Jarvis does this job. If Chu Cheng wants to do this, he will naturally have to hand it over to the omnipotent fifth sister. The second type also comes from Iron Man 3. It is a new technology that Tony designed starting from the Mark 42 armor, remote control. This remote control is not as simple as holding a remote control to operate a drone. The Iron Man armor is a high-precision high-tech equipment, and most of its functions must be controlled by voice and brain waves. Remote control of this high-end equipment is not easy to achieve, but this is not difficult for Stark. He designed a remote control device worn on the head, which completely simulates the UI interface in the Mark armor in front of the wearer. The operator achieves remote control through the same operating mode as the armor, and the effect is exactly the same as going into battle in person. In the movie, the director deliberately deceived through the camera, and even until the 42 armor remotely controlled by Tony disintegrated, the audience did not realize that he was not actually in it. Chu Cheng certainly couldn't miss this function that was fully compatible with him, so when he customized the Iron Bat armor, he added the same remote control module as Mark 42 to the armor's basic system. So now this is the first time that he doesn't use a keyboard or a mouse, but uses a head-mounted remote control built by Stark to truly fight in an immersive way. This is a brand new experience for him. Except that he can't feel the feedback of being hit. It really feels like he is in that armor. Batman and Deadpool are temporarily entrusted to the system for hosting, but Chu Cheng thinks that he shouldn't need their help. He is confident in this armor. Daedalus was dealing with Deadpool when Iron Bat entered the scene. When he sensed the threat, the armor had just completed its transformation. The metal parts were fastened and assembled into the shape of an arm. The Iron Fist was clenched, and a supersonic Iron Fist had already hit his face. Daedalus was hit hard by the Iron Fist on the cheek, and the whole person flew upside down, shooting through several floors and ceilings in succession. The armor moved its palms forward, releasing flames to push in the opposite direction and abruptly stop the momentum. Shadow and Felix were both stunned for a moment. Their eyes all fell on the armor that suddenly broken. The main body was black, with some grey and gold armor embellishments. The whole body and design naturally reminded people of Iron Man, but the paint, the bat-shaped reactor, and the two cat-like pointed ears clearly seemed to show its connection with Batman. From the perspective of others, they were still in a fantasy, and the huge palace where they fought was surrounded by nothingness. And this armor seemed to rush out of the void, with thunder and full cards. The effect of this punch was not bad, and Chu Cheng was quite satisfied with this start. It was a pity that the monster level arm strength of the armor could not be fully exerted. The Iron Bat armor actually adopted the design of Iron Spider-Man in the power system, which was designed to match Spider-Man's super strength. If used alone, the arm strength is actually a little less than that of the regular Iron Man suit. Other functions can be perfectly restored through a remote control, but Chu Cheng himself cannot exert spider power if he is not in the battle suit, so the strength is naturally slightly lacking. But even so, Didallo, who took this supersonic flying punch, now showed an expression of shock. My grandma for a whole year. Is that Iron Man? He said in astonishment. Didn't you say that I will be invincible after obtaining your power? What is this power? Although Didallo has heard that Iron Man is awesome, he has no idea how awesome he is, because he has never seen it with his own eyes. However, since he met this ancient, the other party fooled him and said that they would gain the ability to do whatever they want if they merged. He accepted it doubtfully and found that he really had powerful abilities that he could never imagine before, and he immediately swelled up. It is also a common problem for many guys who have obtained superpowers, even in Marvel. Everyone knows that heroes and villains are everywhere, especially in New York, where you can bump into a superpower almost every time you walk down a street, but there are always some people who easily become arrogant after awakening some inferior abilities, and fantasize that they can punch the Avengers and kick the X-Men to do something big. Didallo is in a similar state now. However, Iron Bat almost knocked him out with just one punch, and this was the first time he began to doubt his true strength. Create an illusion. Yusak ordered sternly. We'll talk about other problems later. He's about to catch up. Yusak was right. In a second, Chu Cheng had caught up. The Iron Bat armor violently crashed through the wall and ceiling, and flew into the room, where the target fell. He saw Didallo, who was knocked to the ground by his punch. The man was covered in dust and was struggling to get up, and the dust around him had not yet settled. Seeing him catching up, Didallo roared and tried to fight back while he was still lying on the ground. A thorn-like structure separated from his right shoulder, piercing through the air and stabbing him head-on. Although the ancient Ursak was in a very bad state, his fusion with humans triggered an unprecedented chemical reaction, which greatly increased his strength. In this state, although T-Shield's full strength stab was not enough to directly penetrate Stark's exclusive gold titanium alloy shell, its power should not be underestimated. It should have been like this. However, Chu Cheng did not even look at him, as if he did not see the oncoming stab, but directly raised his arm to the right. With the hum of energy circulation, the recoil energy from the bat-shaped arc reactor on his chest was filled into his palm, and the recoil beam burst out to the empty space. With a burst of energy, the recoil beam hit the target. A ripple exploded in the empty room, and Didallo, who was about to launch a sneak attack, was blown away from the void. Impossible. While being blown away, the ancient Ursak was also shocked. How did he know where I was as soon as he came in? Question mark? Yes, his illusion can be seen through and can be broken, which has been proven more than once. But no matter what method is used, it takes time. Whether it is a perception ability or Batman's detective mode scanning, no matter how fast it is, it takes a short scanning and perception process to distinguish the illusion from the real body. But how long did it take to create the illusion and set the trap this time? Half a second? Yusak was shocked. This guy only needs half a second to see through his illusion. Question mark? This ancient man obviously didn't know that the ability he was facing was different from the methods used by the ancients to break his illusions in the past. There was no advanced perception scanning device, and it was not even equipped with the Iron Bat armor. The ability he was facing now could be called the natural enemy of his illusion system. It was called Spider Sense. Chapter 263 Super Fight. Spider Sense. From Spider-Man, Chu Cheng has already acquired this ability. This ability in the equipped state allows him to predict various dangers in advance or sense dangerous people. However, this ability is often very abstract. It cannot tell the wearer what the danger is, nor can it indicate which direction it comes from and how many seconds it will be. It only reminds the wearer to be alert. In addition, there is an increase in nerve reflex speed. In the game skill setting, Spider-Man's super reflex nerve ability, that is enough to capture every trajectory in the rain of bullets, is also included in the Spider Sense, so Chu Cheng can get the same effect when equipped. This is similar to a passive skill, and does not need to be triggered actively. But when needed, the ability will automatically start at the moment when an attack is about to come. At that time, in the eyes of Chu Cheng, who is equipped with the skill, the picture effect will become similar to bullet time. Everything will be slowed down, and all attacks against him will become particularly eye-catching. It is this ability that makes Spider-Man extremely difficult to be hit. Chu Cheng is very happy that this test further proves that the Spider Sense he is equipped with can also be applied when remotely controlling the armor. Previous tests showed that this kind of auxiliary skill, which was close to a plugin, did not work when he was operating other heroes in the game. The skills in other games were similar. Just as his physical enhancement skills could not extend his endurance in the game, all the enhancement skills could not affect his personal qualities when operating the character. But now it was different. Now he was not operating the game, but remotely controlling the armor he made, so the skills equipped on his body were naturally useful. In addition, after extracting the new element arc reactor last time, Chu Cheng replaced the old model on the Iron Bat armor. More efficient energy, stronger output. This shot was not easy even for the ancients. Did Allah roared, and before the position of the cannon in his body was restored, he ejected and rushed up again. He turned from his calf to the sole of his foot into a spring-like structure, and rushed to Chu Cheng's armor with a force, and his right hand turned into a black blade, and swung towards his neck. Iron Man is a long-range combat weapon, which is the consensus of everyone who has seen the armor. That thing gave people the feeling of a humanoid nuclear-powered mothership, and its advantages were nothing more than powerful firepower, advanced equipment with multiple functions, and strong mobility. So anyone with a little bit of brain power could tell at a glance that it was a high-tech mage. It was a well-known fact that you had to fight a mage face to face. Although the armor in front of him looked like a bat, it still looked similar to Iron Man. Daedalus's thoughts turned quickly, so he ignored his injuries and launched a face-to-face assault at the fastest speed. Unfortunately, he was not facing an ordinary mage. An important upgrade of the new Iron Man armor over the earlier models and the old exoskeleton is that it has made innovative upgrades to the armor's performance in melee combat. It may be that in the movie Iron Man 3, Stark paid attention to this module because the big boss Killian dismantled too many armors in hand-to-hand combat, and the subsequent models were specially strengthened for melee moves. The number 46 armor has made a particularly groundbreaking progress. The suit is specially equipped with a database that imitates all martial arts schools in the world, and Friday's artificial intelligence has been trained in a large number of fighting moves and skills that humans cannot learn in their lifetime. Therefore, the number 46 armor has the function of analyzing the enemy's moves and actions and establishing a targeted counterattack model. Even Marvel's signature fighting master Captain America was knocked to the ground by Iron Man, who was well prepared for the program in just a few moves in his home movie. Chu Cheng has not unlocked the number 46 armor, but he has already drawn Friday's artificial intelligence from the prize pool. Therefore, this suit with Friday's assistance also has similar modules. In addition, Chu Cheng's current fighting skill is Cassandra's DC brand Dugujiujian. With this skill and Iron Man's fighting AI assistance, he is not bragging. Regardless of strength and skills, he has the confidence to walk sideways in the universe, even if he goes to Marvel DC. Daedalus swung the black blade, and Chu Cheng saw through his moves halfway through. The Iron Bat did not retreat, but advanced towards the blade. With a flick of his left hand, he moved the blade transformed by the T-shield to one side, and at the same time, he punched hard with his right fist. The peerless magic skill that Cassandra has mastered is not limited to predicting martial arts moves, but a more metaphysical psychological reading, which is infinitely close to the superpower of mind reading. In the original work, she and her teammates were tied to a chair with their backs against their backs. She only needed to look at her teammates to read the other party's complex escape plan and cooperate with them. When fighting in a group, she could even predict the attack movements of aliens, including non-human ones. This is of course impossible in reality, but it is well known that the limits of humans in all aspects of the American comic world are not the same as in reality. At this time, Chu Cheng, who was equipped with this skill, felt as if he could read minds. It is hard to say what the specific principle is, but it seems that, as soon as the other party has an idea, he has already predicted and seen through his moves, before he makes a move. Therefore, Chu Cheng had seen through the opponent's sword-like slashing attack in advance, and caught the biggest flaw in the opponent's action. As soon as he made a move, the powerful output of the armor hit Daedalus' face without any hindrance, causing his mouth to twist, and his face to deform exaggeratedly. A normal person's head would have been blown to pieces after taking this punch, but he managed to keep steady. He stood still, and at the same time, his chest suddenly bulged, and the tentacles of the shield quickly solidified into a spike, locking onto the bat-shaped reactor on the chest of the armor and stabbing fiercely. If it were an ordinary person, even a top martial arts master would definitely not be able to predict this move, including the fighting module of Friday AI. Because martial arts skills in the general sense are designed for fighting humanoid creatures, and attacks from the chest are definitely not part of any human moves, and even experienced masters can hardly avoid it. But Chu Cheng saw through it. Spider sense allows him to warn of danger before the opponent attacks, and the speed of nerve reflexes will suddenly increase with the secretion of adrenaline, making the opponent's attack slow down like bullet time. At the same time, Cassandra's motion analysis ability allowed him to concretize a vague threat of the spider sensing warning, allowing him to perfectly and accurately recognize how the opponent's next attack would be launched, and from which direction it would come. The coordination between the skills allowed Chu Cheng to almost see the future images for several seconds in advance. With such a cheat, it was difficult to get hit. Another perfect dodge. Chu Cheng easily turned the armor to the side, and the spikes immediately brushed past the bat-shaped reactor and pierced into the wall behind with a bang. Chu Cheng hit the opponent's chin with a left hook. At the same time, his right hand made a palm, with the back of the hand facing inward and the palm facing outward. The propulsion tail suddenly sprayed from his palm, and a super swing punch with the back propulsion force hit Daedalus' face, almost making half of his head explode. Daedalus was almost hammered into a pig's head, and his mind was full of question marks, while he was dizzy. Isn't this a mage? Question mark? At the same time, he had an unprecedented urge to pull out the ancient monster in his body and scold it. Invincible power. Invincible hook 8. I was beaten into a snakeskin by a wizard when I got close to him. How can you be invincible? However, Yusak was also innocent. At this time, he was stunned while being beaten. In fact, after seeing the ability of Iron Man before, he immediately realized that it would be a failure to play skills with that thing, so he immediately formulated a tactic of relying on the environment and sneak attacks to create conditions, and relying on the deliberate body transformation ability of the ancients to suppress it at close range. But obviously, the plot unfolded completely differently from what he imagined. Is this guy crazy? How can he know how we attack? The armor combat module is working perfectly, sir. Friday said. It seems that we can cross another item off the module test list. He was hit in the face again. Daedalus felt that his nose should be shattered. While T-Shield was trying to repair it, his whole body was blown away again, rolling on the ground like a ball. The last resort. Yusak's voice sounded dully in his ears. I know. Daedalus said vaguely. Now is not the time for them to keep any cards. They must show everything. Stay there. Daedalus stood up and shouted. If you don't want hundreds of people on the whole street to be blown up, then stay still. Huh. Chu Cheng raised his eyebrows. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 264 Cardiopulmonary Arrest. It didn't take Yusak long to realize another benefit of merging with humans. That is, as an ancient, he could also share the human perspective, acquire the knowledge of modern humans, and learn their tools and skills. Just like now. Don't move, hero. Yusak's head popped up again and said, I have completely merged with this human. The only way to separate me is to kill him and cut off his heartbeat. Even I have no choice at this point. We have become one. Unless he dies or I die, we can't restore to our original state, even if I want to. But now the problem is, point we set up the bomb. Dedalo took over the conversation and forced a smile with his bruised face. They were beaten quite badly at this time, and their bodies were trying to repair themselves in time. It was a bit difficult for them to even stand. When he forced a smile, his face was still distorted, and his appearance was a bit creepy. 5 kilometers from here, there is enough explosives to blow up an entire street. The detonator is directly connected to my heartbeat. Once it detects that my heart has stopped beating, it will detonate immediately. Chu Cheng narrowed his eyes. Criminals like to play this trick, using innocent hostages to threaten heroes, because heroes always have to take losses into account. This is always their weakness. Daedalus was not a good person before he gained power, so he was naturally particularly good at this. Although he didn't expect trouble to come so soon, he had already thought of the possibility of being visited by uninvited guests, so he prepared a plan in advance. But there was one thing he didn't expect. Superheroes like the Avengers and members of the Justice League have to face this kind of situation all year round, and bombs and kidnappings are already entry level. Basically, every hero will inevitably encounter similar situations when he debuts. After 10 or half a decade in the industry, almost all mainstream heroes have a dozen ways to deal with this situation. 4 possible means, sir, Friday said. Do you need me to list them all? No, pick one for me. Chu Cheng interrupted directly. I trust your judgment. Okay, sir. At this moment, Yusak's face appeared again, still hanging on Dedalo's shoulder. I have to say that sometimes human strategies even surprise us ancients. No offense, but this is just basic skills. If you don't even know this, then your ancients are too simple-minded. No wonder you were easily subdued. Dedalo was smug, showing a confident smile as he looked at the iron bat armor that was paused in front of him. Okay, big hero, this is my city, and I don't want anyone to get hurt, so we should all not want things to be too ugly. So now, retreat obediently. Before he finished speaking, without giving him any chance to react, Iron Bat had already raised his palm. The recoil beam, which had been secretly charged up to a very strong power in the previous moment, had been blasted out almost the moment the armor raised its palm. The powerful energy hit the center of his heart, piercing through the outer layer of defense. The impact forced traversed his flesh and violently bombarded his heart. Friday had already analyzed the other party's body composition through the scan of the armor. It seemed that Dedalo's body had been greatly transformed by the ancients, and it had become a state that could hardly be called human, but some major organs were still preserved. For example, his brain, lungs, and heart. Through the analysis of the strength of his body's shield from the battle to now, the scanning of weak points, and a series of complex calculation processes of artificial intelligence, the impact force that needed to be applied was accurately converted into the intensity of the recoil beam, and then reversed to calculate the percentage of the output of the new element arc reactor. A series of complex calculations, all completed in a literal moment. A hand cannon shot, and Dedalo's heart stopped beating instantly. He was even talking when he was hit, and his eyes were wide open in the last moment before his consciousness dissipated, with disbelief in his eyes. Impossible. Shouldn't this guy be a superhero? Doesn't it matter to him if the whole street is blown up? Question mark? With all the shock and confusion, Dedalo leaned back and fell to the ground. Felix, who followed to watch the battle, was also shocked. He had already felt bad when he heard the other party mention the bomb, and his brain was racing, but he could not think of a way to defeat the enemy except compromise. Who would have thought that the steel bat would shoot through his heart without saying a word, and he was so shocked that he almost had a cardiac and respiratory arrest. It's over. This was the first thought that popped into his mind. He seemed to have heard the deafening explosion, and he could see the blazing flames from a distance of 5 kilometers. Buildings were engulfed in flames, and innocent people were burned in their sleep. The shield structure of Tiz was instantly separated from Daedalus' neck. It was the severely damaged USAC body. It was also shocked by the other party's unreasonable operation at this time. Without thinking, it quickly separated from the dead host and turned around to try to run away. However, there was no such opportunity. Obviously, its escape was already part of the tactical plan. When the recoil beam was released, the missile compartment carried by the Iron Bat had already popped out, and a freezing bullet flew through the air with a whoosh. Bang! The missile shell exploded, and the ice crystals were released instantly. USAC, who had just been discharged from the body and had not had time to escape, was immediately covered by ice and snow. The rapidly dropping temperature immediately froze it into an ice sculpture. Its irregular shape was like being trapped in a layer of crystal cage and unable to move. I'm sorry, but I can't let you slip away again today. You'd better be honest for a while. Chu Cheng locked the missile in his hand and fired it. However, his body movements did not delay at all during the firing, and he did not even glance in the direction of USAC. He had already set up the missile in advance, and the aiming relied on the system-assisted automatic aiming. The moment Chu Cheng fired himself, he accelerated his feet and sprinted forward, and flashed in front of Daedalus a moment before he fell to the ground. The moment before Daedalus' head had time to hit the ground, the palm of the armor had already pressed on his heart. The arc reactor emitted a pleasant humming sound of energy, and the energy was output from the palm of the armor, turning into countless electric snakes, and rushing into Daedalus' body. Daedalus' whole body shook, and he uttered a series of vaguely. After twitching for a while, he began to groan again. Daedalus' heart resumed beating. The bomb did not explode. Felix's eyes were wide open behind him. What the hell? There is such a trick? Question mark? A little trick invented by Stark, which was used in the Iron Man comics. It is a very practical and very pretentious Iron Man trick to deal with some despicable gangsters. Although Captain America is very uncomfortable with this style, Captain America believes that no matter what, ethically speaking, Stark still murdered the other party once. But Stark disagrees. He only pursues the result and does not care about the process. He thinks this is a brilliant chess move of his genius. Felix was stunned. He could imagine what it would be like if he handled this case alone, and he also deeply realized the gap between himself and a real hero. It's not just about fancy abilities and strength, but also about the lack of all aspects compared to a mature hero. In just a short moment, he effortlessly solved the situation that seemed almost unsolvable to him, defeated the enemy and successfully separated the Ancient One. What he wanted to say got stuck in his trachea, but in short, thousands of words were combined into one sentence. Too strong. Iron Bat clenched his right fist, raised his arm, locked onto the frozen USAC, and activated the mechanism on his elbow. USAC was trapped in the ice crystal and struggled in vain. Lady Ophelia. Red hot light burst out from the back of Iron Bat's hand. A miniature version of the thermal side cannon. The ultra-high temperature beam instantly melted the ice crystal, penetrated the body of the Ancient One, and burned it to nothing in the blink of an eye. I'm sorry. Chapter 265 Research Bug. Problem solved. Chu Cheng scanned again and again to confirm that the last ancient had been completely annihilated by the attack of the thermal vision beam, and then took off the headset and disconnected the connection with the armor. Friday, you take over. He sat back in front of the computer and put on the headset, planned the navigation route and let the armor fly back to the watchtower. I'm doing it, sir. From Felix's perspective, it was impossible to tell that the armor had been operated by someone else in this short period of time. He only saw Iron Bat casually kill the enemy who was almost unsolvable in his eyes, and then activated the propulsion at the same time with his feet and back, and broke through the window with a clang, and disappeared into the night. He stared at the back for a long time, and was a little absent-minded for a while. Okay, we have to go. Deadpool's voice pulled his sight back. He turned his head and found that Batman had disappeared without knowing when, and only the red-clothed weirdo was left in the room. The rest is up to you. You know, clean up the battlefield, use some connections to explain why the mayor was blown up tonight, etc. Deadpool winked at him through the mask, just like you are best at. What? Oh, okay. Felix came back to his senses, but his face was still a little weird. Or frustrated. Chu Cheng behind the screen thought about it and asked before leaving, looks bad? Oh no, I just, okay. Felix looked at the mess in the room with a little distracted. I just thought that I never liked the family business, long before I found out what they really did. I felt like I was living a customized life since I was very young, but it was not what I wanted. The school I went to, the friends I made, the activities from morning to night, everything was arranged by others. Joining the 9th Special Service and trying to use my abilities to help others, I thought I had finally found something truly meaningful. Not arranged by others, not customized, but something I really did by myself. But, he shook his head. I don't know. I just realized that even this path was arranged by the family. They wanted me to be like this from the beginning. And my family is not what I thought. Today I just found out that they are doing business with criminals. But what if it's not just that? What if there are many parts that I don't know? Maybe I never really understood them. So, do you think it makes sense? Felix was stunned and looked up at the red-clothed weirdo in front of him. What? Do you think what you are doing now, working in the 9th Division, is meaningful? Point of course. Ha, that's it. Deadpool patted him on the back. If you ask me, life is like a bitch. You have to go when you have to go. I hope this sentence won't be censored. But the point is, sometimes you don't have to think too much. Look at me, I always act faster than I think, so I'm always cool, and on second thought, forget it, don't take me as a role model. Felix stared at the red-clothed weirdo for a moment, stunned for a moment. Maybe he is right. Yes, what does it matter if it is arranged by the family? Every source of infection he dealt with, every innocent person he saved, and every person who was spared from a disaster that had not yet happened because of his actions. This is real. Having these is enough. This is meaningful. So these superheroes, are they all acting with this awareness? Felix shuddered, and when he looked up again, he saw that Deadpool had walked to the window. I like working with you. He waved his hand. By the way, remember to compensate me with a new sword next time I see you. After saying that, the man had already jumped down. Felix quickly stepped forward and looked down from the upstairs. There was no one below, but he stared at the empty street and was lost in thought for a moment, until the shadow's voice sounded faintly. Okay, I guess we will have to dream about a mean tights weirdo every night for at least the next month. Shut up. The black after image flew into the observation tower with a propulsion tail flame. The Iron Bat armor transformed in the air and returned to the flight cabin state like a transformer and flew accurately into its storage area. The mechanical armor just did it back to its original position and the hatch closed again. It seems that you are very satisfied with the test results of the new armor, sir. Friday smiled. Yes, the performance is better than I thought and the operation feels good too. Chu Cheng was still somewhat immersed in the first-person perspective combat operation designed by Stark. If this is a game, it is definitely the best game in history in terms of immersion and operation experience. And what is better than operating the character is that it does not consume extra physical strength. After all, it is the armor he actually made in reality, not a game prop, so remote control will not consume extra physical strength. As long as the built-in reactor of the armor has electricity, it is simply I can play like this all day. JPG. By the way, I would like to remind you that this semester is about to end, and you may need to face the final exam, sir. Friday reminded with a smile. Chu Cheng. This semester is about to end? He has long lost the concept of time after staying at home playing games for too long. What day is it today? Friday, sir. Friday joked, just like my name. Well, mark it in the schedule first, and forget it, if you don't have time by then. Chu Cheng said. His life has changed drastically this semester. He has many more important things to do now. How is the progress of the Alpha D project? Chu Cheng asked. It has entered the testing phase. According to your arrangement, Spider-Man Peter Parker and Spider-Woman Gwen Stacy are working together to design the project. Both Peter and Gwen are academic masters. Although they are not as good as Stark, who is a pure science and technology scientist, their scientific research and development capabilities are also genius level. If they were put into reality, they would definitely be monster level geniuses leading the times. It happened that both of them were free at the moment, so Chu Cheng selected the two of them in the new custom equipment development in the technology module, and asked them to work together to develop the project. Friday waved his hand, and projected a picture showing a laboratory in the watchtower. Two little bugs from different parallel worlds were busy with a complex mechanical device in the laboratory. "Your program design is wrong," Gwen yelled. "I have run it many times, but there is nothing wrong." Peter knocked his head. "Oh, okay, it looks like there is a little flaw. That's why you were always second in the class in high school." Gwen was proud. "What? Oh, then your parallel world may be different from mine," Xiao-Chang said proudly. "You are the second in my world." "Really?" Gwen raised her eyebrows. "Really?" Xiao-Chang looked away guiltily. "HMM." Gwen laughed strangely, without stopping her work. "Then I'll take it as it is. First place." Xiao-Chang. Although the two scientific research bugs triggered an interesting dialogue from time to time, like a little Easter egg, the progress of the work was not delayed at all. Chu Cheng could see from the panel that the progress bar was continuing to rise, and now it has passed 96%. From the experimental table, it can be seen that they are designing a cutting-edge white drone. In reality, drone technology is already quite advanced, and military drones can also carry weapons and undertake multiple tasks such as reconnaissance and espionage, targeted bombing, etc. But what he is developing here is not an ordinary drone equipment. The technical prototype he is currently reproducing is similar to the mass-produced drone left behind by Stark after his death in the movie Heroes Expedition. The design will be completed soon, and then it can be put into mass production. Friday said. "Very good, then we'd better get started. I want to try out a new idea." Chu Cheng smiled. "The first step of the test, let's try to cover a city with them." Chapter 266 Monitoring System. Test. Friday, how are the operations going? "Perfect, sir." Friday said. "The first batch of 108 drones put into use are all working well. The 108 drones are based on Stark's design in the movie and have been streamlined for mass production costs. In the movie, Stark's drones can almost rival an entire army and are even equipped with extremely advanced holographic projection technology. After Mysterio got those drones, he directly programmed them to project visual projections in reality that were enough to deceive the whole world, which shows how strong their performance is. Of course, that part of the function was realized by the technology of Mysterio's own think tank, and it has some science fiction element. Mysterio used the holographic projection of the drone array to play movies, forged a giant monster that destroyed the world, and packaged himself as a hero against evil. There is creativity. But let's not talk about whether this trick is feasible on the technical level, and whether it is possible to be discovered. If Xiao-Chang accidentally flies into the holographic projection during the battle, the scene will inevitably be a little embarrassing. This part of the technology is not available in Chu Cheng's technical library for the time being, but it doesn't matter. He deleted a certain amount of firepower and reduced the size of the drone. He didn't need the drone to be able to make a realistic and impeccable holographic projection like in the movies. He just needed it to eliminate its tracks and achieve invisibility through similar functions. The core strengthening direction is to focus on invisibility and reconnaissance capabilities. Where is our app? The test has been completed, and Miss Gwen Stacy is responsible for programming. Friday said. "Okay, then what are you waiting for? Put it into testing immediately." As he gave the order directly, the watchtower started again. The white mechanical hatch automatically popped open, and a small drone swooped down with tail flames. 108 drones activated their stealth modules within a minute of entering the atmosphere. It was as if an invisible energy field wrapped around their metal bodies. With a flashing effect of optical camouflage, the drone formation disappeared one after another, as if they had rushed into the void, and there was no trace. They cannot be seen by the naked eye. Their extremely small size and anti-radar coating can shield any radar in the world today, making them almost mechanical ghosts. Only Chu Cheng can accurately check the positioning signal of each drone on the operating application that he arranged Gwen to write for the drone. Now each drone has landed within the scope of the city of Windelany. They quickly dispersed and flew to different areas set by the program, patrolling along the streets and alleys over their own designated areas. Every drone here is his eyes. They patrol and are on duty 24 hours a day, without sleep. Any criminal activities in the whole city, including car accidents, fires and other accidents, can be seen by them, even if there is a slight disturbance. Once any drone finds a problem, an alarm will be issued. The corresponding superhero sent to the local duty will immediately go to the scene to take action. Of course, the premise is that the hero is in the idle state. For example, the two archers assigned to Windelany by Chu Cheng during the current testing phase, Hawkeye and Green Arrow. He was quite surprised that the two combinations actually have a team buff, called the strongest archer in history, another cross-border linkage. However, it is true that the positions of these two in their respective companies can be said to be half-brothers. The most accurate archer in the world, who can shoot arrows from 100 steps away without missing, has a superb arch fighting technique and a bunch of high-tech arrows with control, output and explosion. It is almost difficult to find the difference between the two in actual combat with a microscope. Then the first cooperation between these two cross-company archers is indeed remarkable. 1 hour after the drone was launched, one of the drones searched a den. The store was disguised as a base of a laundry shop. A local killer organization in Windelany was well equipped. Of course, the so-called well-equipped is only relative to ordinary criminals. The arrow shot in through the window with a clang and was nailed to the wall in the hall. The high-tech device carried by the arrow had a chance to explode a small electromagnetic pulse, and the entire den was instantly shut down. When the killers fell into chaos, the two archers had already flown in. Green Arrow and Hawkeye, one on the left and one on the right, grabbed different high places respectively. The two men's guns crossed, and arrows were fired one after another. The killers who were caught off guard in the darkness fell down one after another. Up there, although they might be second-rate killers, they were better than ordinary criminals after all. Soon someone found the trajectory of the arrow and began to raise his head and shoot. But the two men knew the principle of sniping very well, and they had changed their positions long before the sniping point was exposed. Hawkeye hung upside down on the beam at the other end of the roof, drew his bow and shot an arrow, which swept diagonally downward over the crowd and shot on the ground. The high-tech mechanism at the arrowhead started, and purple poisonous smoke gushed out immediately. Several killers cried and coughed while kneeling on the ground, losing their ability to move. On the other side, Tank Joe was not to be outdone. He shot an arrow and hit a killer in the chest head-on. The killer paused, and the arrow immediately exploded into endless blue electric snakes. The killer stopped moving immediately and was twitching all over. The electric current spread and soon climbed onto the bodies of several people around him, causing them to twitch violently all over their bodies. Then the two archers each put on a respirator and flew down, in the dark, and filled with purple air, and landed directly among the killers. Hawkeye landed and kicked one person with a kick, swinging his bow arm like a stick, and hit several people dizzy with a few consecutive bangs. Green Arrow was also not slow, pulling out an arrow from the quiver with his backhand, holding the arrow, and stabbing one person head-on. At the same time, he swung the compound bow in his other hand, and in a few strokes, several more people fell under the bow. The two people staggered their figures, swinging bows and arrows directly in the crowd, and in a few strokes, they beat the killers to the ground, and cried out in pain. Chu Cheng's perspective switched back and forth between the two people, and from time to time, when he passed by, he would perform a combo skill, with a full sense of attack. People can't help but sigh that it is really the most fun to use a bow and arrow directly to swing at people. Playing archers without close combat is simply soulless. Sorry to bother you, sir, but there is a new situation, Friday said in his ear. Chu Cheng, who was enjoying the combo on the screen, raised his eyebrows and asked Friday, "What's going on?" 3 seconds ago, a drone noticed a fire on 9th Street. Friday said, "Ordinary fire?" "Yes." Then pass the alarm to the fire department. The archer duo hadn't finished their work yet, and rushing over might delay time. But this situation was also within Chu Cheng's expectations. Real-time monitoring of an entire city, with a range wider than Lawyer Ma's human radar, will inevitably lead to times when the heroes on duty are too busy to handle everything. So they don't need to do everything themselves. Some relatively low difficulty jobs with few hero points and little experience can be fully handled by the Public Security Bureau and the fire department. When the heroes on duty are far away, or are busy with other things, they can be handed over to the relevant departments. Even when a low-level infection incident is discovered, and the hero is not available, the local Special Service 9th Division agent can be contacted to handle it. The significance of establishing this system is not only to be able to brush experience more efficiently and quickly, but also to maximize the living force, which also includes the strength of relevant departments. With higher efficiency, almost any accident or crime can be missed, and there is even a chance to nip crimes in the bud, improving public security with unprecedented efficiency, and even eradicating crime in the bud in the end. This is just the first step, just a test, and Vandelany is just his test field. The next step is to promote this system to the entire Earth Star. Chapter 267 Death Row Prisoner. Thunder City, Titan Prison. This is not an ordinary cell. It is a separate suite, without roommates, and separated from all other prisoners' activity areas. Almost any reasonable request of the prisoner living here will be met. He, or she, can ask to see any of his family members, can specify any delicacies, and no matter what he says, the prison guards will immediately take care of it. At first glance, it seems to be a VIP suite with unique treatment, but if possible, even the most fierce prisoners would never want to come here. The reason is simple, this is only for death row prisoners. It has been a while since there have been new guests here. The last prisoner who was sentenced to death was 3 years ago until now. Aslan is the long lost owner of this room. He was sentenced to death a month ago, and now the execution date is coming soon. This makes both the prison guards and prisoners stay away from him this month. No one dares to trouble him, because you never know what the consequences of provoking a dying person will be. Especially when this person is Aslan Khalifa. If someone interviews anyone who knows him well, and asks what kind of person Aslan Khalifa is, the word that appears most frequently is undoubtedly madman. Because this is definitely the most pertinent evaluation. It seems that he was born to kill. He has appeared on the list of problem teenagers who bully and fight many times, since his school days. When he grew up, he joined a local gang. It is not a big gang, but there are still many people. However, in a conflict with his superiors, Aslan killed all the people present in the organization by himself. His method was extremely cruel, and created a bloody case that shocked the entire city's underground world. After that, he was wanted by the whole country. During the pursuit, he brutally killed more than a dozen innocent civilians, and many security guards died in his hands. The degree of cruelty was unimaginable. It was also because of this that he was sentenced to death almost without suspense after he was arrested. But Aslan didn't care about it at all. There was only 1 day left before the execution, but he didn't even think about it. At this moment, he was in his VIP suite, punching the reinforced alloy wall of the cell one punch after another, and the dull bang echoed in the confined space. Of course, he was only a human being after all, a flesh and blood body, and no matter how hard his fists were, they could not be as hard as the reinforced alloy wall panels. The cells designed for death row prisoners almost discarded all unnecessary parts, and the prisoners' daily activities were also reduced to the necessary level, which made it almost impossible to escape from prison. His fists were already bloody, and it was likely that he would break his bones in a few punches. But he seemed to feel no pain, and continued to mechanically swing his bloody fists at the wall one punch after another. There was actually no point in doing this, not that he could really fight his way out of this indestructible cell with his fists. He was simply venting his excess strength, and releasing the destructive impulse that had nowhere to go. Lee Chengdale's evaluation of him in a report was very accurate. Aslan Khalifa is a pure beast, and his muscles think faster than his brain. He killed people just because he wanted to kill. He destroyed just for the sake of destruction. That's why he was in such great danger. Fortunately, he was going to die. It should have been like this. Haha. Look at you. You look so miserable. The voice rang out in the closed cell. Aslan stopped what he was doing, squinted his eyes, and turned his head. There was no one. Your talent shouldn't stop here. The voice rang out again. We shouldn't stop here. They sentenced you to death and put an end to you on their own initiative, as if they really had the final say. Those ridiculous people, they wanted to see the news of your death on TV and in the newspapers. Because they were afraid of you, it would make them feel at ease and let them sleep peacefully at night. The voice laughed twice in a gloomy and strange way, and the laughter echoed in the small space. But it doesn't have to be like this. The voice continued. Tomorrow doesn't have to be your end, it can also be a starting point. Our starting point. Aslan kept his gloomy eyes, that seemed to be dripping with water, like a startled wolf looking around for prey. Who are you? He asked in a hoarse voice. The voice laughed. Me. It laughed. I'm you. A moment. Be alert, boys. The warden, with a big belly, walked in the narrow corridor. Keep your eyes open, follow closely, and keep your bullets loaded. If the guy crosses the security line, you will shoot directly. If he makes a statement that implies an aggressive tendency, you will also shoot immediately. Don't worry about the problem of accountability. If someone kills him, everyone on this planet owes that hero a medal. You are a little too nervous, boss. The captain of the guard followed him and said, I know he has done a lot of things, but now he is unarmed. Only one person, and we are fully armed. Don't take it lightly, he is the most dangerous person I have ever seen in my life. As he spoke, the warden had already arrived at the door of the special cell. Now, open the door. Be careful, he may attack you. The warden stepped aside. Yes, sir. The captain stepped forward, fumbled out a bunch of keys, found one of them, and opened the door. The moment this heavy iron door was opened, everyone almost had a cardiac arrest. There was no one inside. Impossible. The captain exclaimed. There is no other entrance or exit here. How did he do it? Level 1 alarm. The warden also came to his senses immediately. We have a super high risk escape death row prisoner. Before he finished speaking, when he turned his head, he saw the devilish face that he would never forget. It was a prison guard following the team. Because he was wearing a helmet and protective gear, and the light was dim and no one was paying attention, no one noticed it. But now looking at the prison guard, the twisted and weird smile, as if the sinister eyes were not something that humans could have, was the death row prisoner who was supposed to be in this empty cell. Somehow, he left his prison, and may have killed a prison guard. He changed into the prison guard's clothes, and followed the team silently, as if mocking all of them. No. The warden shouted, it's Khalifa, hurry up. But it was too late. With a cruel smile on his face, Aslan Khalifa raised his gun without saying a word, and fired a volley of bullets at the people beside him. In an instant, blood gushed out like a fountain, and a whole team of prison guards were dead without even a chance to react. The prison guard who fired the gun took off his head protection, revealing his unkempt and cruel face. You are you. The warden looked at Aslan who suddenly appeared in front of him, his face full of shock and fear. But how did you? Another person appeared in the back. No, it's a bit inaccurate to say that it was a person. That thing just had a body shape similar to that of a human, with slender limbs, but its body was mainly green, and it had devilish dark red eyes. A phantom. On the last day of his life, when he was about to be executed, a phantom was born in Aslan Khalifa's body. The phantom walked to the captain who was shot, and lying on the ground groaning, opened his 5 fingers, grabbed the captain's head, and lifted him up with his feet off the ground, ignoring the blood flowing from the gunshot wound, and the painful groans. Come meet my new friend, the warden. Aslan said expressionlessly. I call it destruction. He paused and squinted his eyes, to look at the captain who was lifted up in the air. I remember when I first came in, you had a lot of fun playing with the water gun. The captain squeezed out from his teeth with difficulty. Please, I have a family. Really? That's great. As the voice fell, the phantom destruction had already exerted force on his hands. The captain's head was pulled out from his neck, dragging a long spine, wrapped in sticky blood, like a flying snake. The warden sat down in a pool of blood, his hands and feet were weak, and he could hardly move. Destruction casually threw the captain's head and the spine attached to it aside, and Aslan looked at the warden expressionlessly. The warden knew that his life was hanging by a thread, and he tried to calm himself down. I can help you leave here. There is a fingerprint verification outside. You need me? No. Aslan Khalifa interrupted him and at the same time leaned over and pulled out the sharp knife from a dead jailer. I just need your hand. Chapter 268. He is mine, sir. The curtains were drawn and the morning sun shone on the bed. Chu Cheng slowly turned over in the quilt, opened his eyes in a daze, and saw the smiling face of the fifth sister at first sight. Friday. What time is it? He yawned and sat up. 7:30. What time did I go to bed last night? 4 o'clock, sir. Friday said, according to your request, 3.5 hours of sleep, not a minute more or less. Chu Cheng yawned again and jumped out of bed to change clothes. 3.5 hours was calculated by Friday, based on his current physical strength and the consumption in the game yesterday, and accurately assessed the required sleep time. After such a long time of high intensity training in the game every day, Chu Cheng now has superhuman physical fitness even without equipping skills. It is because his daily game schedule consumes a lot of energy equivalent to strenuous exercise. Otherwise, with his current physical condition, 2 or 3 days of sleepless nights would have no effect at all. Previously, he felt that sleeping 7 or 8 hours a day was a bit too much of a delay for him to gain experience and level up. If he could make use of the nighttime, his efficiency would undoubtedly be greatly improved. Now he has compressed his sleep time to the extreme, averaging about 3 to 4 hours a day. His sleep quality is very high, and his body recovers very quickly. It only takes such a short time to recharge back to full state. With the subsequent upgrades, he may be able to recover faster. Every mealtime is the time for Chu Cheng to check messages. Because the daily schedule is very tight and there are many things to deal with, Chu Cheng has set a priority standard. On Friday, according to the standards he set, and his own judgment, all calls and messages sent to him will be assigned according to a priority list. Only the first 2 priority messages will notify him during his game time every day. As for some secondary priority messages, he will selectively learn about them during meals and rest time. For example, some messages in the school group suspected that he had been missing for so long because his friends had been living a shameless life with a rich woman. For example, the problem solved by the heroes who were idle while he was sleeping last night, the branch quests triggered, and the clues detected by the drone network of Indelany. Oh, yes, there was also a message from his superior, Tang Li, about his promotion. That's right, Chu Cheng almost suspected that he had seen it wrong at first glance. He stayed at home and played games all day and didn't care about anything else. How did he get promoted suddenly? After reading the message, he found that his superior seemed to praise his performance in clerical work. He said that his work was much better than that of most clerks, and the leader liked it very much. It happened that there were many vacancies in the reorganization of the 9th office, so he ushered in his first promotion. After reading this, Chu Cheng called Tang Li without thinking and mentioned it. Yes, I'm not kidding. Congratulations in advance. Tang Li on the other end of the phone said with a smile, to be honest, you are the fastest promoted among the newcomers I have seen, but this is also earned by yourself. Of course, my sister's strong recommendation is also a big plus. You have to treat me to a meal when it is successful. Sorry, but I don't think I'm ready. Chu Cheng said without hesitation, my ideological awareness is not enough, and my ability is still lacking. The more I work, the more I can realize this. I think there are still many things I need to learn in this position, and I still need to hone and temper myself. Wait, Tang Li suspected that he had heard it wrong. Do you want to give up this opportunity? I have to remind you that this is a very hard-won opportunity. Don't think it comes easily. And if you give up this time on your own initiative, there may not be another chance in the future. Because everyone knows that this time it is your turn, and it is your chance. If you have this idea again when there is a vacancy in the future, others will think that you are grabbing an opportunity that should belong to someone else. It sounds like it means that there may be no more promotion in the future, which is even better. Chu Cheng feels that his current state is good and does not need any changes. Thank you very much, but I can really feel my own shortcomings and don't want to disappoint the trust of the organization. Seeing that he couldn't be persuaded, Tang Li had to give up. Well, okay, you are such a straightforward silly boy. After hanging up the phone, He pondered for a moment and felt that the civil service department of the ninth department might be a little difficult to say. He had clearly emphasized that women should submit the materials before the deadline every time, and also asked her to deliberately not do it so perfectly every time and leave more flaws in her work. As a result, this is still the most outstanding newcomer. So how good are the others in their work? As expected, there is a saying that it is a problem to not slack off at work. Although it is a bit extreme, it has its own reasons. Friday, let's lower the standards for materials in the future. Chu Cheng was ashamed. Oh, by the way, there are some materials that can be delayed as long as possible, and they can be submitted after the deadline, and when someone urges them. Okay, sir. Chu Cheng sighed. I often feel out of tune with you because I'm not good enough. JPG. I looked at the news from the school again, and the final exams were approaching. But Chu Cheng is now in a stage of rapid construction, and all fields are just starting up. It can be said that everything is in ruins. It is estimated that there will be no time to go there by then. Wei Futong often asks himself whether he is still alive or not. Is it because he has been squeezed dry by a rich woman? Why can't he be seen for so many days? The squad leader also asks him if there is anything wrong. He is already thinking about either building a drone mecha and then using Batman's holographic digital camouflage to let it be his stand-in to live his daily life, or simply put on a layer of bionic skin. With the technology and ability he has now mastered, he can have as many means as he wants. Sir, high priority notification. Friday reminded, it's for Batman. Li Cheng, Titanium Prison. Agent Luo Yajin. When the cold and hoarse voice sounded in the corridor, the prison guards and other staff were frightened. Only Agent Luo Yajin, who came to the scene as a representative of the ninth department, held a cigarette in his mouth and said calmly, don't be nervous, it's one of us. Everyone turned their heads and found that Batman had appeared behind them at some point, but none of the group of people noticed it. Batman? But you're not here. The person in charge at the scene was stunned. Batman usually only operates in Jiangdu, which is basically a consensus that does not need to be stated. For people in places like Li Cheng, he is just a distant legend. I asked him to come. I hope you don't mind. Luo Yajin said. As the only person designated Luo Coding, he is already half Batman. He is the only one who has a top secret emergency line to contact Batman. Oh, okay, of course I don't mind. My god, this is the first time I have seen a superhero in person. The person in charge couldn't help but look Batman up and down, but this place is already on level 1 alert, and the entire prison is blocked inside and outside. How did you? Basic operation, no need to make a fuss. Luo Yajin put out his cigarette. He thought to himself that the safest place in the world is a public toilet in this guy's eyes. It's really rare. He turned to Batman. I'm glad you're here. I wasn't sure you would show up. Someone escaped from this prison, an extremely dangerous death row inmate, a real lunatic. He was supposed to be executed today. Batman said expressionlessly, you wouldn't contact me just because of an escaped death row inmate. Yes, I wouldn't, unless that guy happened to have this thing. Luo Yajin asked the people around him for a tablet computer and showed Batman the surveillance footage from last night. Chu Cheng watched the surveillance from Batman's perspective. Phantom. Batman said in a deep voice. Yes. Luo Yajin said solemnly, a madman who had already killed people like crazy suddenly gained this kind of power. The consequence. Unfortunately, we may have foreseen it. 19 people died in the prison last night. The person in charge said heavily, including the warden and our captain of guards. He cut off one of the warden's hands and used it as the key to pass the fingerprint lock. Then the captain of guard, that poor guy, had his head torn off along with his spine. MD, I may never forget that scene in my life. It's a nightmare. I guess you don't need to be reminded how much strength it takes to do this, but Luo Yajin said that Phantom has very strong hands. He paused and cursed under his breath. Fuck, that little ancient one chick was right. These things are becoming more and more frequent. Until last year we had never heard of such a thing as the Phantom. Now, they're popping up everywhere like mushrooms after rain. And suddenly appearing on the worst guys like this. She's right. Something is coming. I can feel it. And they're already messing up the world before they even show up in person. No, they won't. Not while I'm here. Batman said coldly, taking a last look at the bloodthirsty lunatic escaping from prison on the surveillance screen. He's mine. Chapter 269 Negative Public Relations. Licheng, Suburbs, Restaurant. Aslan Khalifa picked up the hot sandwich, opened his mouth, and took a bite. Clear teeth marks were left on the whole wheat bread, and the peanut butter mixed with gravy and butter. The delicious taste bloomed between his tongue. He chewed twice, frowned, and then raised his eyes. Wherever his sight went, the people in the whole restaurant trembled, and lowered their heads for fear of being noticed by him. But Aslan didn't look at them more. His eyes moved to the trembling face of the waiter behind the counter. I said I wanted Thunder brand peanut butter, but this is obviously not it. Sorry, sir. The waiter said bravely in a tone that was almost crying, but my Thunder brand peanut butter is sold out today. Really? That's too bad. Aslan shook his head. It looks like your life is over. He raised his gun and pulled the trigger. A volley of bullets swept out, and the poor waiter was immediately shot into a sieve. The gun turned around, blood splattered in the restaurant, wood chips flew everywhere from the tabletop, and the windows were blown into countless pieces with continuous clanging sounds. The magazine was emptied in an instant, and a mechanical sound came from the barrel. Aslan shook the slightly hot gun, threw it aside, picked up the drink at hand, and took a sip. There was no one alive in the entire restaurant. He sat in the messy restaurant, calmly finishing his sandwich among the corpses, as if he had just done something insignificant. You could have saved the ammunition. The voice sounded next to him. The phantom he called Destruction appeared out of thin air, standing in a pool of blood, and coldly scanning the corpses on the ground. I can definitely handle it, you just need to think about it. The phantom said. I know. Aslan continued to eat the sandwich. I'm just more used to doing it myself. The kind of feedback from your bullets piercing through flesh, watching them being torn apart and bleeding. You will ruin that pleasure. It's just that you haven't gotten used to it yet. The phantom said. We are already one person. Maybe. Aslan hummed, ate the sandwich, and sucked the remaining juice on his fingers. Destruction reminded. You made a lot of noise, and someone may come soon. Humph, I wish I could. Although he said so, he still got up and walked out of the restaurant. For the time being, he didn't seem to plan to confront the pursuer head on. He longed for destruction and fighting, but not here. He pursued exposure and liked to see his masterpieces appreciated. Fighting the pursuer in such an inconspicuous place was not only disadvantageous to him, but also could not meet his needs. On the other hand, he also felt that he needed some time to adapt. A huge change had taken place in him, a change that even he himself could not adapt to immediately. He needed time to understand this change, to get used to the phantom in his body, and to adapt to how its abilities should be used. But no matter what, Aslan felt that he had never felt so wonderful in his life. It was as if this was his innate power. He was becoming the person he was destined to be, but now he was just waking up from a dream. Several ideas had already flashed through his mind, some prototypes of plans. Now that he had been reborn, he naturally had to draw a line between himself and the outdated self. He must do better than before, brew a more grand feast, leave an unforgettable mark on this city and the world, and complete the most outstanding work of his life. He just hadn't figured out how to do it specifically. As soon as he went out, Aslan saw a black car parked on the side of the road. The window was rolled down, and a well-dressed man sat inside, waving at him. Mr. Khalifa. The man smiled. I just saw you having a meal, so I didn't disturb you. But if you can take the time to talk to me in your busy schedule, I believe it will be good for both of us. Oh. Aslan stopped and became interested. Want to talk with me? Maybe it's a trap. Destruction reminded. Oh, that's better. You say it like I care. Aslan snorted, strode forward and got into the car. The door closed, and the car quickly drove out along the street. My name is Iwanaganeo. The man introduced himself with a smile. We have never met, but I have heard of your name for a long time. But Aslan interrupted him halfway through his words. I know you, the CEO of Sojit's Technology. Aslan said expressionlessly. I read the news. You know me, haha, that's easy to say. Hiawanaganeo narrowed his eyes. I'm looking for you to make a deal. Aslan made a vague nasal sound. You should have no shortage of better business partners than me. In this matter? No, you are the best choice, because you are the only professional. Iwanaganeo said, I know you. I have read your files. I have admired your masterpieces. Your work is impressive and no one has ever matched it. I know you pursue killing and destruction, and you need attention, and need people to know that it is you who do it. And I just need you to do what you are best at, which should be a very cost-effective deal for you, because that should have been your plan. The difference is that I will pay you a large sum of money, an amount that may be many times more than the total amount you have robbed in the past. And I will also arrange a perfect escape route for you, prepare a vehicle, and a fake identity, to give you a chance to get away. Iwanaganeo paused and chuckled. This should be pretty good for you, right? I have seen your previous works, and every action you take is clean and neat, and you always try to attract as much attention as possible. But the escape plan is not your strong point, and I can help you with this part. As he spoke, he tried to read something from the madman's eyes. But unfortunately, he only saw the dark abyss, and there was nothing in it. Conditions? Aslan said dryly, you can't pay for nothing. Of course, but it's a piece of cake for you. Iwanaganeo said with a smile, my condition is that you need to use the weapons we provide. When you do it, some special equipment. I guarantee that these will be better and more sophisticated than the equipment you can get. As he spoke, the assistant in the front seat had already handed over a small box. Iwanaganeo opened the box and saw a special pistol lying quietly inside. A model that has never been seen on the market, a custom-made firearm. Aslan picked it up and checked it, and soon found its difference. There was a logo on the back of the gun, with a label that reads Stark. Aslan raised his eyebrows. One of your competitors, Stark. It seems that you don't watch the news often. Iwanaganeo smiled. This guy's name is everywhere now. It's not easy to ignore this name living on this planet. I've been a little busy these 2 days. Aslan leaned back in his chair and said lazily, you know, first the death penalty, then this. It's almost never quiet. There's no time to pay attention to major events. Tell me who this guy is. A guy who goes beyond the scope of a competitor, a natural enemy, that we all have to kill. Iwanaganeo said indifferently. The madman in armor broke the rules of the game and tried to overturn the table and eat the whole cake himself. He is suppressing our space and taking away what belongs to us. If he thinks we are completely helpless, he is wrong. Yes, he has never produced firearms, but that doesn't matter. As long as someone takes a dozen weapons, a weapon with his name on it, to kill, voices of doubt will appear. There are many people who don't care whether it's true or not. Many people are already dissatisfied with him, and this is just an opportunity. You are only responsible for being the fuse. We have our own professional team to deal with fanning the flames. I see. Aslan Khalifa forced a smile. You want to buy an explosive negative public relations campaign. He was trying to mobilize public opinion to put pressure on his competitors, an old-fashioned method, but this time the method was even more outrageous. So, what's your answer? Iwanaganeo asked. Okay. Aslan turned the special pistol in his hand and looked at it. As long as the money is in place. Chapter 270, Special Circumstances. After Batman left the prison, Chu Cheng quickly exited the game and checked the development progress of the technology module. Friday, how is a second batch of drones going? It's in development. Friday said, only 32 have been completed so far, and the first phase of testing is still in progress, and there may be places that need to be debugged. In addition, according to the plan, the raw materials for the second batch of drones have not yet arrived. Some materials have been exhausted, and we may need to wait for the next batch of materials to arrive before we can complete it. Chu Cheng frowned slightly. Licheng is a small place, a little far from Jiangdu, and it was not on Chu Cheng's list of concerns for the time being. According to the original plan, if we take it step by step, it should take a long time for Chu Cheng to send heroes to take over this city. The tragedy in Titanium Prison forced him to pay attention to this place in advance. A killer with phantom power is an urgent threat, and every minute and second of delay may cause large-scale casualties. Chu Cheng quickly realized that this was a good opportunity to test his new deployment, the efficiency of the drone network he established in finding specific targets. However, as Friday said, the Star Technology Committee is helping them prepare a new batch of materials, and it is expected to arrive in 2 days. But it's not a big problem. First, launch all the remaining 32 drones to Li Cheng, Chu Cheng ordered, then temporarily transfer them from the drone formation in Wendelin according to how much coverage network is still lacking. It's already being done, sir. While he was talking, the watchtower on the Earth star orbit had opened its hatch again. More than 30 drones formed a neat formation and broke through the atmosphere, locking onto the direction of Li Cheng and diving. At the same time, a part of the drones patrolling the streets of Wendelin also separated, and the thrusters were fully opened to accelerate to the other side of the horizon, heading towards Li Cheng. The remaining drones intelligently adjusted their patrol routes, trying to include the vacant parts of the coverage network into their field of vision as much as possible. Of course, no one noticed all this. They were invisible throughout the whole process, and no one, whether the public or the official or the underground world, noticed the changes in the invisible electronic monitoring network around them. And the facial recognition program I mentioned? Chu Cheng continued to ask. It was just completed 10 minutes ago. Mr. Stark programmed it himself. Friday said, it uses the most advanced facial recognition algorithm we currently have. Its accuracy and efficiency are a whole generation ahead of the most advanced technology in the world. Okay, upload it to the central server and let each drone download the program. Chu Cheng said, let's see how it works. Okay, sir. The transmission efficiency is also very fast, and all drones completed the download in an instant. As the first prisoner who had the honor of testing this algorithm, Aslan Khalifa's facial recognition data was quickly uploaded to the center and set as the highest query priority for all drones. Li Cheng was not large in size, and the drone formation quickly completed full coverage of the city. They concealed their whereabouts and traveled between high-rise buildings and streets and alleys. The most sophisticated scanners were like countless hunters' eyes, scanning every corner of the city. The test went even smoother than Chu Cheng imagined. Just 10 minutes after the drones were deployed, one of the machines sounded an alarm. The invisible camera captured Aslan Khalifa's ferocious face at a distance that was almost blurry on his face. He wore a wide-brimmed hat, a pair of silly sunglasses to cover his eyes, and his collar was pulled high, but he was still recognized by the facial recognition software produced by Stark. I think we found the target, sir. Very good. Let the drones prepare their weapons just in case, but don't alarm him. Stay behind and wait for orders. Make sure he doesn't run away. Chu Cheng said as he started to log in. After a moment of loading, he entered the hero selection interface. Although his drone was a movie simplified version, it was also equipped with a certain amount of firepower. However, the target had a phantom and might have superpowers, and the drone might not be able to handle it. If he acted rashly, he would not directly use drones to intervene in the battle unless he was forced to do so in an emergency. Because the purpose of this network is monitoring, it is very important for all drones to remain invisible. Once a drone enters the field of view publicly, it will attract attention and affect the development of the entire system in the long run. Only when they remain invisible can they play their best role. They watch over everyone, but no one needs to know that they exist. That's why Chu Cheng didn't wear a suit, to enhance the firepower of the drone. Send a text message to Agent Luo, he won't want to miss it. Chu Cheng said. Okay, sir. Li Cheng Central Square. This small city is one of the few prosperous areas, and some citizens think it's the only place where you can find the feeling of a big city in the whole place. In the center is a circular flower bed, surrounded by neon lights and electronic billboards that never turn off all year round. Popular movie stars pose on the billboards, and the streets are crowded even in the dead of night. Aslan Khalifa walked into the largest shopping mall in the square, fully armed under his wide windbreaker. This is the place chosen by Iwanaganeo and him, located in the center of the entire city, the most eye-catching place, and will also be the address of the city's headlines tomorrow. Go in and do what you want, and then come out immediately. Iwanaganeo explained as he asked his assistant to hand a plan to Aslan. My people have arranged an escape route for you. According to our estimates, you have at most 15 minutes before the Public Security Bureau and some other troublemakers arrive. After that, just follow the plan and you'll be fine. I don't need that kind of thing. Aslan snorted, not intending to accept his plan. Okay, I admire your confidence. I smiled, but based on my experience, it's always good to have multiple escape routes. Aslan thought about it and said nothing, but still accepted the plan. But as he said, he didn't think he would need it. Now he has gained extraordinary power, stronger than ever before. Sir. The security guard at the entrance of the mall stopped him. Please take off your hat and sunglasses. This is an extraordinary period, and there are special circumstances. Oh, special circumstances, of course. Aslan raised his head, smiled at the security guard, and raised his gun at the same time. I think I'm the special situation. But he never dreamed that the security guard reacted very quickly and grabbed his gun hand, making a perfect grab, and pulled it with amazing strength. Aslan felt pain, and the gun in his hand fell to the ground. He was startled and looked at the security guard in front of him in astonishment. He saw a light blue ripple rolling over the security guard, and the next second a huge bat with a height of 1.8 meters appeared in front of him. Interesting. Batman said coldly, then I think I should be your special case. The double monthly ticket seems to be ending. Please vote. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 271, Hit in the Invincible Frame. Batman. Surprise flashed across Aslan's face. But how could it be possible? He had just arrived and hadn't had time to do anything yet. How did he notice it? But Aslan soon stopped caring, and a cruel and satisfied smile appeared on his face. Finally, a worthy opponent. I'm looking for an enemy with high gold content. Aslan sneered. Looks like I won the prize. While he was speaking, a shadow had emerged behind Batman. It appeared out of thin air, as if it had walked out of the void, silently raising its sharp claws. Destruction, his phantom. As the name suggests, it was born for destruction, and was best at tearing things apart. But its claws finally failed to swing down. The red gold afterimage seemed to jump down from the ceiling, dragging white silk threads, and diving along an arc. The phantom was completely unprepared, and was kicked out by a gliding kick. Iron Spider's flying kick hit, and he used the force to do a backflip and landed gorgeously. Sorry, don't be too nervous. It's just your friendly neighbor doing routine work. He spoke to comfort the frightened people in the mall, and at the same time, he did not stop his hand movements. He pulled the trigger of the palm spinner with his right hand, and the spider web was launched. The strange phantom struggled to get up, and was immediately stuck to the wall by the spider web. Although Licheng is not a city where superheroes often appear, someone soon recognized them. Oh my god, is that Batman? Batman and his followers. In Licheng? They must be kidding me. Maybe watching the excitement is a common trait of humans in any city or any parallel world. After the people around recovered from the panic, their first reaction was not to quickly move away, but to take out their mobile phone cameras to watch the show. Xiao Chang, what? I'm not a follower. Ah, forget it, it doesn't matter. Then a weird scene happened. The body of the phantom that was kicked away recovered while penetrating the spider web that bound it. It was as if the body had briefly become a virtual phantom. Okay. Spider-Man scanned and analyzed from the built-in display of the Iron Man suit. This is starting to get a little bit new. At the same time, Aslan's wrist, which was held by Batman, also suddenly broke free in the same way, as if his arm had penetrated through. Let's see if you are really as durable as the legend says. Batman. Aslan backhanded and punched Batman in the face. He was a natural fighter. He was particularly good at exploring and summarizing the methods of fighting, since he was a child. Later, after fighting for so many years, he occasionally had the opportunity to learn some boxing and kicking skills. On the street, he had no pressure to fight many people alone. At this time, he awakened the phantom, and his physical strength was greatly improved. He felt that he had never been so strong in his life, and at the same time, he felt that the urge to destroy had never been so overwhelming as today. He felt that he could kill an elephant with one punch. But Batman did not dodge. He blocked the powerful punch with his left arm, and then his arm suddenly bent and punched Aslan in the face. The tip of Aslan's nose broke with a snap, blood flowed, and stars appeared in front of his eyes. He was shocked and seemed to be unable to figure out how the punch was successful. He didn't see the opponent's moves at all. Even if he had prepared in advance, he would still be unable to defend against Batman's punch again. He was broken in just one move. In fact, the difference in strength between the two sides was very obvious. If it were someone else, he might have retreated at this time. But Aslan was a madman, born to be excited about destruction. Pain and blood seemed to only stimulate him more. With a crazy look in his eyes, he shouted it's fun, and then he punched up and down again. Destruction and Spider-Man also started fighting again. The Phantom's physical strength was also extraordinary. He approached at an astonishing speed along the S-shape. Iron Spider shot left and right, firing the recoil laser cannon in his right hand continuously, and the Spider Silk launcher in his left hand also fired continuously. He used the recoil beam to force Destruction to move and dodge, and at the same time, he predicted and fired two balls of high-tech Spider Silk. The special Spider Silk device exploded immediately after hitting, and countless spider webs shot out in all directions, blowing up the ceiling and floor. The spider web bomb, fired through the spider web launcher, will explode like a grenade when it hits, but it will not explode with lethal shrapnel, but countless spider webs. It is a powerful control field that can instantly control a large number of targets. Once this thing is detonated at close range, countless spider webs will explode at the same time. Anyone who touches it even once will be immediately bound and restrained. Even Spider-Man himself is not sure if he can avoid all of them. But Destruction actually rushed forward and avoided all the spider webs. No, it should not be avoided, but directly penetrated. All the spider webs passed through him directly, as if he did not exist. However, when he rushed to the upper door and grabbed Spider-Man with one claw, it was clearly accompanied by an amazing sound of breaking through the air. At the same time, the Spider Sensor logo also jumped out on the screen. All signs show that the opponent is not an illusion, but a real entity, and its attack is a real threat. An ability similar to virtual penetration? Chu Cheng asked, while controlling Spider-Man to avoid the punch. Yes, sir. The analysis results show that the opponent should have the ability to change from virtual to real in a very short moment, and can penetrate almost all objects at the moment when the ability is activated. Friday paused. It applies to both the main body and the Phantom. You can't tell when he is a virtual shadow and when he is real with the naked eye, but Spider-Sense can. Chu Cheng said. Not only does it require Spider-Man's ability to judge, but it also requires the player's reaction speed and hand speed. Fortunately, Chu Cheng has all of these. In addition, when operating a specific hero in the game, the player himself seems to share the hero's ability to a certain extent. Especially when operating a hero like Spider-Man, who is famous for his reaction speed. The screen will be slowed down like a slow motion when a QTE shot or a Spider-Sense dodge appears, which greatly reduces the difficulty. Destruction hit again. The Spider-Sense mark popped up, and Chu Cheng immediately selected a weapon and counterattacked without thinking. Spider-Man spread his 5 fingers, and the Phantom's punch hit his steel palm. At the same moment, the recoil energy cannon in the palm of his hand fired. The energy of the arc reactor was output from the palm of his hand, and he blasted out to meet the opponent's fist. The Phantom was unable to react in time and failed to become virtual. His entire arm was instantly submerged in the water. He was blasted back half a step. His entire arm to the shoulder was blasted into ash, leaving only a charred fracture on the arm. Haha, thank you, Mr. Stark. Spider-Man thanked Stark for giving him the recoil cannon and kicked the Phantom in the chin. The Phantom's head flew up high in the air with strange force and then fell heavily to the ground. The Phantom was beaten by Iron Spider-Man with Spider-Sense for 3 or 2 rounds and was unable to fight back, but its owner had no time to take care of it for the time being. Yaslan Khalifa was not having an easy time either. As soon as they met, He found that the few skills he had learned from years of fighting were nothing in front of Batman, and his strength and speed, which he had once thought was invincible after being strengthened, seemed to be crushed by the opponent. So the only thing Aslan could rely on to fight was his newly awakened ability to penetrate the virtuality that he shared with the Phantom. Each time the ability was activated, he could only obtain an almost invincible virtual effect for a few tenths of a second. Another dark punch came towards him. Seeing that there was no way to avoid it, Aslan did not think twice and activated his ability again, and his body was virtualized again to try to avoid Batman's punches by relying on physical immunity. However, bang, his cheek was hit hard by the punch, strengthened by Batman's gauntlet. Aslan's face was deformed, his head was buzzing, and stars appeared in front of his eyes. At the same time, a long string of big question marks appeared in his mind. Was he hit? In his virtual invincible frame? Question mark? Why? Chapter 272 Being Targeted. Being beaten is nothing new for a man like Aslan Khalifa. He has been punched and shot since he was a child, but he has never been as shocked as today. He has awakened his power, which he believes is a gift from the devil. It happened that the day before he was sentenced to death. He can now pass through objects freely, and it is with this ability that he can enter and exit the cell at will. Yes, in fact, he does not really need the warden's hand to unlock the fingerprint lock. He did it just to cover up so that people would not associate him with the ability to pass through walls. Because in this way, no one would be wary of it, and he could ensure that he had a tactical advantage. But now, this ability, which he thought should be the power of the devil, has failed. In front of a madman, dressed as a bat. No, maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe he made a mistake when he activated the ability just now. Maybe he is not proficient in his new power, so the ability just now actually failed. Yes, it must be like this. After a moment of thinking, he had already stood still. Batman had already come close to his face again, and Aslan instinctively threw 2 punches at him. Batman hooked his wrist and stretched out his hand and easily broke it with a grab. It was another method that Aslan could not understand at all. In his eyes, he had almost no possibility of continuing to make any moves. It was as if the bat just raised his hand carelessly, and with a random move, all his subsequent possibilities were blocked. He could only watch his joints being grabbed and subdued by the opponent. Aslan had never met such a terrifying opponent in his life. As a last resort, he had to use the technique of virtual penetration to win in danger, but he never expected that Batman would ignore it again and punch him in the face with a bang. Aslan's mouth twisted, saliva flew with blood, and 2 teeth were knocked out. His chin was almost shattered by the strange force of this punch, but he had no time to pay attention, but stared with eyes wide open in shock. This time he was very sure that his ability had been activated. Only in this moment, he should be invincible, he should be able to penetrate any physical entity, and he should not be able to be hurt. How is this possible? Or, Aslan looked at Batman, a trace of fear began to appear on his face. Is this bat also a ghost? Batman is certainly not a ghost. He is just an ordinary man in DC, where gods are everywhere. But he has money and equipment, and he also has various simulated superpower equipment stolen from his teammates. For example, the signature of this batsuit, the Allen system. It simulates the penetration ability of the Flash by oscillating its own atoms, but it is not just able to penetrate. In the original work, the Flash has many uses for this trick, and it can be varied according to the needs of the plot. For example, it can increase mass, oscillate the hand to make the hand knife become a truly indestructible knife, such as modifying the data in the hard disk, and even when the hanging is large enough, it can oscillate at the speed of light to disrupt time and space and directly open a time and space portal on itself. The Allen system of the Batsuit is only a superficial simulation, and the degree of hanging is not even 1% of the Flash's original. But it at least has the most basic penetrating ability, and can restrain all superpowers with similar abilities. This move can not only vibrate its own atoms to penetrate any material, but also adjust the vibration frequency to the same frequency as the virtual superpower. Whether it is the phase change ability like Marty in Manhunter or the atomic vibration of the Flash, it can be touched when the frequency is adjusted correctly. When Aslan used that ability for the first time, the detective mode had already scanned and recorded his various data. The module of Alan's system automatically adjusted the vibration frequency table to the same as the opponent, so Aslan's mysterious penetrating ability became useless in front of Batman. Aslan was dizzy and his jaw was dislocated. While stumbling, he caught a glimpse of his own phantom beside him, but found that his magical phantom had been beaten into a puddle of mud by Iron Spider's brute force, and it seemed that there was no hope. While he was terrified, he turned his head to look at the huge bat approaching his face, and an unprecedented sense of fear had arisen spontaneously. Even when he was fighting with people and his life was hanging by a thread in the past, he never felt such fear as he did now. No, he couldn't continue to fight like this. This thing was not a human being at all, but something between a ghost and a demon. Some kind of supernatural judge came to hunt his sinful soul. "Stay away from me," Aslan shouted, and raised his hand to throw a concussion bomb while retreating. A large amount of smoke and tear gas erupted instantly, obscuring his vision. Thanks to the help provided by Iwanagan Aoya, otherwise he really couldn't get such equipment for a while. This should buy him a short time. Aslan immediately activated his ability again, and activated his virtual ability. He wanted to penetrate the ground directly, and fall to the lower level. No matter what, he had to get rid of this damn bat, as soon as possible. He was completely unprepared, and a strong backlash force erupted from the ground, when he tried to penetrate downwards. The pain like an electric shock made him almost faint, and at the same time his heart was shaking wildly. Although he was extremely shocked, he certainly couldn't figure out what happened. Using the penetrating ability to escape seems to be a natural option for a person with penetrating ability, so Chu Ching has already made arrangements for this. While Batman was fighting with him, 4 drones had already driven to the underground level in stealth mode. The 4 drones maintained a well-organized formation and hid in the underground level throughout the whole process. They had already made targeted deployments. The energy released by the components carried by these 4 drones exerted a layer of energy field on the ground structure of the demarcated area, which was specially designed to prevent superpowers from using virtualization abilities such as phase change or atomic oscillation to penetrate. The Flash and Martian Manhunter, the founding members of the Justice League, both have similar virtualization penetrating abilities, so it is not difficult to understand why the part of Batman in the technical module happens to have a complete set of response plans. So if you want to fight Batman, your superpowers had better not be common, and don't collide with the abilities of his teammates or the Gotham fan club. Aslan was careful and did not use the penetrating ability when leaving the prison, but borrowed the warden's fingerprint to get out. However, when he first acquired this ability, he tested it in his cell and used it to penetrate the wall of his cell. He thought no one would notice it. After all, it was not so easy to guess that a prisoner had acquired the ability to penetrate walls. But he was wrong. Batman has a detective mode and a means to replay the crime scene from a virtual modeling perspective. So within 3 minutes of entering the cell, Batman saw through his ability. This is why Chu Cheng asked Batman to temporarily modify the 4 drones in the laboratory and add anti-penetration modules before going out. For the Master, the main battlefield of a battle is not actually a face-to-face fight with real swords and guns. The real key part is the intelligence war. If you reveal your abilities and trump cards to him in advance, and he happens to have sufficient conditions and preparation time, then the battle is actually over before it starts. But Aslan obviously didn't realize this. He obviously didn't know his sudden ability as well as his opponent. No. Aslan endured the severe pain that almost made him faint, turned his head, and rushed out of the smoke screen, forcing his body, which seemed to be on the verge of a strike, to run to a ventilation vent. That was the escape route arranged for him by Iwanagan Aoya, a backup plan that he had sneered at and thought he would never use, but now it became his only chance. According to Iwanagan Aoya, the exit of the ventilation duct had already been prepared with a vehicle, and the vehicle had everything he needed to escape. All he had to do was escape from there. As long as he could get to that place. Aslan retracted his hand from the ventilation duct, as if he had been electrocuted, and looked at his broken right hand with an expression of unspeakable fear and confusion. Yes, his right hand had been cut off from the forearm, and the broken end was flat and charred, as if it had been cut by a sharp blade of 3000 degrees Celsius. It was a laser. High temperature lasers were set up in a crisscross pattern in the ventilation duct, waiting for the madman who didn't know whether to live or die to enter. Aslan held his broken arm and turned his head blankly. In his field of vision, Batman was close to his face again, looking at him coldly. When he saw him again with the bat mask and the gaze colder than death, Aslan felt his hands and feet cold and completely lost the idea of resistance. He had calculated everything. He knew everything about his own abilities, ways to escape, and all the retreat routes. Aslan swallowed his saliva. Bang. A punch was thrown in the face, and Aslan was knocked over. His eyes rolled back, and he lost consciousness. Before he fell into a coma, besides the fear that filled his brain, he had only one last thought. This is really not my cup of tea. I'm being targeted. Chapter 273. A warning. It's true, I saw it with my own eyes, a middle-aged man said to the TV camera during an interview. At the same time, more people who claimed to be witnesses appeared on the TV camera. Batman. That's right. I tell you, he is so cool, 10 times cooler than all the descriptions of him you can find on the internet. He suddenly jumped out and beat up that psychopathic bastard. No one cares about the armored spider guy. I tell you, he is also very handsome. My phone recorded the whole process. That armor and his strength, you didn't see how far the monster was kicked away by him. And he can project some kind of energy attack from his palm. Energy weapon. Do you know what this concept is? The incident in the central business district immediately detonated the small city of Licheng. Almost in an instant, everyone knew that Batman had come to Licheng. Various media also rushed to the scene as soon as possible. After understanding the situation, many people couldn't help but exclaim that what happened today was simply a miracle. A fully armed madman, carrying all kinds of sophisticated guns and ammunition, broke into the largest mall in the entire city. This could have been destined to become a day that will be remembered forever in the history of Licheng, in a completely different form than it is now. The mall could have been littered with corpses, and countless people could have been killed by the madman's gun. He would have created a century of bloodshed that would shock the world for many years to come. But none of that happened, thanks to just 2 people. Batman caught the madman before he could fire the first shot. Some witnesses said that he didn't even react to what was happening because the process was so fast. In less than a minute, all the abilities and methods of the pervert were completely neutralized. 0 losses and 0 casualties. Batman and Spider-Man undoubtedly did something almost impossible today. I just walked to the door and was about to go out. A young girl said with lingering fear, I could have died now. There is no doubt that this is something the sheriff's department can never do. I think the city owes him today. What? No, Batman didn't kill that man. A witness shook his head and denied when asked about the relevant questions. Oh yes, I know, he is dead, but it was not Batman who did it. What? Who killed him? How would I know then? The scene was being cleaned up. Agent Luo Yajin left the team again, lit a cigarette, and walked carelessly to a small corner where no one was. You fired the gun. Batman's voice sounded from above. Don't talk nonsense. The scene was in chaos at the time. Who knows who fired the gun? Luo Yajin snorted. But they all knew that it was Luo Yajin who fired the gun, and Aslan Khalifa died under his gun. Yes, he knew that this was a death row prisoner, and he might be resentenced to death in a few days after being caught. Wasting energy to kill such a scum would not only bring forward his death date, but also require him to submit a report after returning. If he is unlucky, he may even be criticized. But he doesn't care. He just enjoys the pleasure of eliminating scum. But I didn't call you here to talk about this. I have something else to show you. Luo Yajin said, and took out a transparent evidence bag. Batman appeared behind him without knowing when, and reached out to take the bag. There was a bullet lying quietly inside. The logo on the bullet was clearly marked in the detective mode. Stark. One of the bullets used by the pervert. Luo Yajin said, there are many more. The equipment and instruments he used all have this label. Luo Yajin changed the subject. Of course, I know it's not true. That cocky guy called Stark, is he your friend? Luo Yajin couldn't help laughing. I have to say, their way of blaming others is very creative, but also very stupid. No one would really believe that your Iron Man would make such a boring thing, right? Although the weapons used by the perverted killer can be considered well equipped, they are obviously different from the style of Stark's products. At least so far, Iron Man has brought some high-tech products that have shattered people's worldviews in various fields. This kind of ordinary firearms and ammunition does seem a bit low for him. But Elio Yajin thought about it. Oh, wait, just ignore me. Thinking about it, I suddenly feel that there are many idiots. After all, the 9th Special Service Department was once a secret organization, and it has a set of intelligence control. Therefore, Elio Yajin knows that the rhythm should never be overestimated. The IQ of some netizens. Sometimes the direction of public opinion really depends on how the rhythm is led. As long as the strength is in place, white can be wiped black and black can be washed back to white. But tell your friends not to worry, no one will pay attention to this. Elio Yajin said, we will make sure of that. There is only one small problem, that is the man behind this murder, the guy who provided him with these equipment with ulterior motives. Turning again, Batman was gone. Oh, good. Elio Yajin lit a new cigarette. I guess you have it done. Chuangri technology. Iwana Ganeo stood in front of the huge screen in his office, squinting at the report about the Central Business District. Outrageous, no one mentioned the weapons at all. Iwana Ganeo muttered to himself, Batman, how did he happen to be there? No one was injured or killed. Unbelievable. He snorted. It seems that this madman is just talking big, but it's not true at all. Let's just treat it as a failed investment. The assistant asked, so the plan is scrapped. No need. Iwana Ganeo said, let's stick to the original plan, keep the heat of this matter, and try to make people pay attention to Stark weapons. Although the effect will definitely not meet our initial expectations, it is better than nothing. This is just the beginning. Wait for the next step. The TV screen suddenly turned, and a new video appeared. Iwana Ganeo was stunned for a moment, and looked at the assistant. Who is playing this? No, sir. I didn't move the remote control. The assistant said hurriedly. Looking at the screen again, Iwana Ganeo's pupils shrank, and he almost had a cardiac and respiratory arrest. The picture showed a black car moving, and he recognized it as his own car at a glance. The situation inside the car was clearly captured, and there was even audio. It was Iwana Ganeo and Aslan Khalifa. I know you seek killing and destruction, and you need attention, and you need people to know that's what you do. And I just need you to do what you do best, and I'll pay you a lot of money. Iwana Ganeo almost felt dizzy. He immediately realized what the consequences would be if this video and this conversation were leaked. In that case, he would be completely finished. But how is it possible? Where was this recorded from? Iwana Ganeo. A cold and hoarse voice sounded. He turned his head in horror and almost screamed when he saw Batman standing in the corner of the room. Like a vampire, but also like a silent ghost. He didn't even know how long he had been standing there, but no one in the room noticed. Batman, why don't you? Iwana Ganeo thought quickly. You don't understand. I can explain. I have checked your transfer records. A hidden account, transferred from a secret funding chain to Aslan Khalifa. It's very covert, but obviously my people are better. Iwana Ganeo's heart sank even more, and he felt like he was falling into an ice cave. He knew. He had the evidence. It's over. Security. He gritted his teeth, like a beast with nowhere to go. Get out. Get him out. This idea was obviously too naive. Batman appeared in his room. How could he keep his security? While they were talking, the security guards outside the door were already lying on the ground. They fell asleep. Batman walked up. Every step he took, Iwana Ganeo seemed to feel his heart stop beating. Now, it's your turn. Don't come over here. Don't come over here. A few minutes later, the president of Shuangri Technology was bruised and swollen, with multiple fractures on his body, and was hung awkwardly on the ceiling. This is a warning to all scum like you on this planet. Batman has stepped onto the windowsill, and his black cape flutters in the moonlight. I'm watching all of you. Chapter 274 Letting Down the City. Vindelani, the Tomorrow Building. This is one of the city's landmark buildings and the headquarters of the city's giant Tomorrow Group. Its apparent owner is Yan Wenjin, who is the helmsman of the group. But only those who really understand it know that the one who really has the final say is the mayor, Didalo Reed, who is also the owner of the city. Yan Wenjin may own the group on the surface, but he and his board of directors are just puppets. Their group, like many other local companies, has to obey the mayor's orders, like a dog on a chain. But now they have the opportunity to make their own decisions for the first time. More than a week ago, Vindelani ushered in the biggest change of the century. The ruler of the city was overthrown, and Didalo Reed fell headfirst from his stable throne, and was smashed to pieces. That dealt a heavy blow to the city's hitherto entrenched criminal system, but it also became a clarion call for the entire city's underworld to enter a carnival. After the mayor was killed, almost every guy in the streets, who had a few followers, regarded himself as a role, and everyone fantasized about sitting on the throne. Some media even said that the end of an empire was just the beginning of a nightmare, and chaos would become the main theme of the city for a long time. At least the streets would be the territory of criminals for many nights to come. But they were wrong. The chaotic days lasted less than a week, and today happened to be the 7th day. And today, this period of disorder will come to an end. The fall of the Tomorrow Group is a sign. At 7 o'clock in the evening, the Vindelani Security Bureau had surrounded the building. The fully armed anti-explosion team surrounded the bottom of the building, but no one could break in for a while. The entire building was almost armed as a military fortress with live ammunition, and thugs were shooting out of countless windows with machine guns. All entrances were set with automatic mines, and the mine clearance team was working under the cover of the anti-explosion team. In fact, everyone inside and outside the building knew that it was only a matter of time before this place fell. They are fighting a desperate battle, which is meaningless. Earlier today, the sheriff's department received materials from the masked vigilante, known as Green Arrow. The materials and charges were clear, listing all the activities of the Tomorrow Group's board of directors, which was enough to deal with them all. At this time, Yan Wenjin, who was trapped in his office, was furious. Were we discovered? He stared at his subordinates in front of him with wide eyes. Yes. The built-in pipe system, the only secret passage out of the building, and that exit is already blocked by sheriffs. Fuck. Yan Wenjin was so angry that he punched the computer monitor in front of him. It's that green hat madman, it must be. The previous evidence is also. You clearly promised that you would not leave any handles. There can't be any loopholes. Why is he always one step ahead of us? Why does he know everything? For a whole week, the Tomorrow Group and its entire gang have been in dire straits, all thanks to that green hat madman. That guy is simply omnipresent. He appeared at all the most critical transaction sites, and his eyes seemed to be everywhere. He had a clearer grasp of the organization's movements than the organization's leader, and any action was always one step ahead of them. After their key bases were destroyed, and important members were arrested one after another, in just 1 week, they were already pushed to the last step, like being squeezed into the corner of a cage by a brutal beast, with no way to retreat. Yan Wenjin's voice had just fallen, but there was a bang, and the lights in the office suddenly went out. No. In just 1 week, the villains of the entire Vindelani had realized what turning off the lights meant. It was a signal that death was coming. Ding. That was the sound of the elevator arriving at the floor. But the elevator to this office was independently operated, and was now locked. Theoretically, no one could take this elevator up now. So there was only one possibility for the people in the elevator. Fire. Yan Wenjin roared. This is the area with the best deployment of forces in the entire building. Almost without the boss's order, the gunmen have already spontaneously poured bullets into the elevator. Countless gun muzzles roared at the same time, as if releasing a torrential rain. The metal door of the elevator was instantly beaten into a sieve by the rain of bullets, and the cold white light pierced through countless holes, making the scene even more eerie and strange. But they may be disappointed. There is no one in the elevator. The ceiling suddenly exploded, and the bricks and stones that collapsed knocked 2 people unconscious. The green shadow broke through the ceiling and fell to the ground, and an arrow was shot out when it landed. The arrow hit a minion who was desperately shooting at the elevator, and it exploded with a snap. A large mass of quick-setting paste instantly trapped several miscellaneous soldiers around it. Green Arrow landed on the ground, slid, and swooshed 2 arrows in a row. One of the electric shock arrows instantly electrocuted a group of people, and the other nailed to the wall and exploded with a bang, knocking down several people. It's so easy to fool. The plan of the break-in went surprisingly smoothly, almost making Chu Cheng forget that he was facing a real person instead of an NPC with limited intelligence. Because to be honest, the NPC might be smarter than them. Use the elevator to attract hatred in the front row, while the hero you control moves in the ceiling and waits for an opportunity to break in. All of these people were attracted by an empty elevator hacked by Friday the Hacker, and no one thought that the enemy might not be inside. Please, have you ever seen a superhero who honestly breaks in by taking the elevator? This thing itself may not be compatible with superheroes. Captain America Luo Zhengli, who has an inextricable relationship with elevators, has a lot to say about this. Although his battle in the elevator with big guys all over was a classic, if you give him another chance to choose again, he will definitely choose to climb the ventilation duct like Batman. Instantly deal with the main miscellaneous soldiers who are gathered together. Green Arrow picked up his bow and arrow and jumped up from behind the cover and rushed straight towards Yan Wenjin in a 100-meter sprint. The few scattered soldiers around recovered their strength and tried to shoot at Tang Jie. Tang Jie completely ignored them, but all of them were hit by an arrow from nowhere before they could pull the trigger. They fell to the ground. It came from the vent in the corner. The vent grill had been kicked open at some point, and Hawkeye squatted inside, shooting with a bow and arrow. Catch him! Yan Wenjin shouted. The remaining man and woman beside him, the last line of defense before the big man went to prison, flew to meet Green Arrow. These two were his personal bodyguards, the top bodyguards in the underground world, and they had been paid a sky-high salary for many years, just to deal with this moment. Especially the woman. Although she looked fragile, she was said to have subdued 10 strong men with her bare hands, which was extremely powerful. Moreover, this man and woman were originally partners. They followed the same master when they were learning. They knew each other very well. Moreover, they were inseparable. The moves they learned were specially designed for doubles training. They learned from each other's strengths and weaknesses. When they worked together, they could exert a situation where 1 + 1 was far greater than 2. Can't you guys just leave us alone? Yan Wenjin shouted angrily from behind. You are the cancer of the city. This city was originally very good, and everything was moving along the trajectory it should be. But you just had to interfere. Why? The male and female bodyguards, one with a dagger and the other with a short knife, attacked from the left and the right, attacking each other's 2 different vital points at the same time. But the Green Arrow drew his bow and arrow horizontally, relying on the length of his compound bow to cleverly block left and right, and the dagger and short knife hit the 2 ends of his bow arm with 2 clangs. Then he exerted force with his right hand, and the compound bow turned nimbly, and with a snap, it hit the male bodyguard so hard that he saw stars, and then it lifted up and hit the beautiful jaw of the female bodyguard, and the force penetrated her forehead and made her faint on the spot. It seemed that the 10 strong men with bare hands would end here, losing the last line of defense, seeing the cuckold Robin Hood's cold gaze, and then seeing his subordinates lying on the ground behind him. Some of them were still twitching from electric shock. Yan Wenjin trembled all over, and the little courage that emerged when he shouted just now disappeared instantly. You ask why? Green Arrow kicked him over, stepped on Yan Wenjin's chest with his boots, and pointed the arrow at his nose. Because you have failed this city. Chapter 275 Tight Schedule. Thanks, Archer. On the ground floor of Tomorrow Building, a team of sheriffs sent the handcuffed Yan Wenjin into the car. Chief Hao, who led the team, personally thanked the archery duo. We just did what we could, Chief. Green Arrow watched Yan Wenjin being pushed into the car while yelling. Hawkeye leaned on the side with his arms folded, and a reporter was snapping photos of them from outside the blockade. Ever since Tony Stark opened his visor and said I'm Iron Man in front of the world, superheroes have begun to become closer to the public from the completely unknown existence like ghosts in the past. This has developed fastest in Jiangdu. To this day, every area of Jiangdu has been installed with a bat lamp, which was built with funds from the municipal government. It is not only the main means of contacting Batman in an emergency, but also represents the city's recognition of Batman, and it is a bond established between the Guardian and the Protected. But compared to the elusive and serious Batman, the one that the citizens feel most close to is Spider-Man, who started to act later. If people feel more dependent and in awe of Batman, then the feeling they have towards Spider-Man is closer to that of a neighbor who chats with them. Today, Vendarroni has also gained its own hero. In just 1 week, the popularity of the combination of Green Arrow and Hawkeye has soared, and it has surpassed all public figures, and has firmly topped the popularity list of Vendarroni. There was even a wave of archery craze in the city, and all archery clubs in the city were fully booked. Archery, which was originally a tepid sport, instantly surpassed the traditional popular ones, and seemed to be on the verge of becoming a national sport in Vendarroni. Want a cigarette? Director Howe took out a cigarette box, took out a cigarette, and gestured to Brother Tang. Brother Tang declined. So Director Howe lit up a cigarette and said casually, "Brother, you guys are amazing. I've been in the sheriff's office for 20 years, but what happened this week is like science fiction. The chaos in the whole city ended in 1 week, and the leaders of the 4 major crime families were captured. And there is such sufficient evidence, all the chips are amazing." This is also what shocked many people in the sheriff's office and even in the city. Green Arrow and Hawkeye, or the alliance that supports their actions behind the scenes. The efficiency of their actions is simply incredible. They thought that the fall of Daedalus would be accompanied by long-term chaos and the lowest number of new cases in history, including the so-called experts on TV. But now the facts have undoubtedly slapped all of them in the face. A gang war at the level of total chaos was strangled in the cradle before it even officially started, and the most powerful players were eliminated as soon as they entered the game. And the only ones who created this brilliant record were just 2 lone Robin Hoods holding bows and arrows. A survey launched on a website showed that more than 90% of people believed that the city was becoming better than ever. They had never felt so relieved to go out at night, and they felt more hopeful about the future than ever before. By the way, did you listen to the speech of the new mayoral candidate last night? Director Howe laughed. That guy said he would build a statue with a bow and an arrow in the city center as a new symbol of the city. Do you know what that means? It's an honor, Director. But what do you think? This is the result of joint efforts. Green Arrow said. This time he is not just talking nonsense without any basis. Since the city has achieved full coverage of the drone network, Chu Cheng has planned a system of superheroes and various departments working together. The existence of heroes should be a symbol that a city needs. They give people a goal to trust and inspire people. Each department should play its role as much as possible and do a good job in its respective position. As the saying goes, good steel should be used on the blade. The value of a superhero should be to deal with problems that are difficult for regular departments to solve, or that are inconvenient for them to intervene according to regulations, and to avoid unnecessary casualties during operations, rather than taking care of everything like a nanny. This leaves only Mackenzie. That guy saw that the wind was not right recently, and I don't know where he ran to hide. Director Howe said, but compared to the guys we have already caught, Mackenzie is just a small character and has little impact. Maybe he has already escaped from here and fled far away. No, he is still here, but he is hiding more concealed. But we already have clues. Green Arrow said. Director Howe's eyes lit up. Already have. But we just caught him. Good guy. Although he had experienced their incredible efficiency many times this week, Director Howe still felt surprised at this time. Were you guys already preparing in advance when you were dealing with Yan Wenjin? We are always good at multi-threaded work. In fact, I was just about to mention the matter of McKinney. We planned. Green Arrow paused here, as if he was thinking. But in fact, Chu Cheng turned off the microphone button and turned to ask Friday. Friday, time. 3 o'clock in the afternoon on Wednesday. Friday said. Wednesday? The day after tomorrow? Chu Cheng raised his eyebrows. Our entire schedule tomorrow is full. Mr. Tony Stark will have a meeting with the Star Technology Committee tomorrow. Miss Cassandra in Hu Cheng also has an appointment with Directly Shao to capture the backbone of the local blood gang in Hu Cheng and their protectors in the city's high-level officials. Remember? Ah, now I remember. Friday continued to show Chu Cheng his schedule for today. You said that Makani was just a small fry, and he wouldn't run away, even if he was late for one day, so I moved him to the day after tomorrow. Half an hour ago, the drone group deployed in the Yuxa Desert scanned the stronghold of the armed organization you told me about, and you asked me to raise the priority of this. Yes. Military grade bases, more soldiers and better weapons mean more hero points and experience, which is much faster than catching leaders on the streets. Chu Cheng nodded. At the same time, he returned to the computer screen and turned on the microphone key again. Sorry, I was distracted just now. But there is a conflict in our schedule, so let's do it at 3 PM on Wednesday. You can prepare the manpower first and evacuate the residents and clear the area in advance. At that time, my people will send the specific address and action plan in advance, and you just need to cooperate with us as we did today. You have the final say. Archery. Director Howe smiled. At this time, Hawkeye had already fired the grappling hook and flew away. Green Arrow also raised his bow and arrow and shot a grappling hook arrow to the top of the building. Wait. Director Howe called him out. Green Arrow paused and looked back at him. Thank you. Director Howe said seriously, on behalf of the entire city. After Green Arrow fired his arrow and left, Chu Cheng quickly logged off, returned to the hero selection interface, changed his vest, and logged in again. A series of game loading icons. When the screen lit up again, he had transformed into Tony Stark, the invincible Iron Man. The Mark 43 armor was activated and assembled on Tony in the laboratory on the screen. The drone discovered the bases of the local illegal armed organization The Order in a mountain range in the desert, a total of 4. Friday said, I have marked all 4 coordinates for you. Is it Iron Man who is dispatched today, sir? Not exactly. I remember you seemed to say that our first legion was completed today. Chu Cheng asked. Yes, sir. Very good. Edit the order, follow the Iron Man leader, and dispatch the entire army. Chu Cheng rubbed his hands. It's time for actual combat testing. Okay, sir. The hatch of the launch silo opened, and pairs of ice blue eyes lit up one by one in the dark. Unmanned Iron Man characters with the Avengers logo printed on their chests soared into the sky one after another, and an entire army spewed out flames in unison, breaking through the clouds. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.